Hello. Welcome to the Fanfic Majesty. If you want more content, you can follow me on Patreon. I will be uploading more content on there that will be exclusive. The link is in the description. Please support me. 11 SS Chapter 251 Determine the location. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. The New World is a very dangerous sea. Not only is there the world's top pirate power here, but the climate in this sea area is straightforward to tell the world that this is not a paradise. For the White Dragon Fleet, even though they are a fleet that travels between the New World and Paradise, this route many times, the dangers of the New World still make them somewhat unstoppable. The power of nature has been enhanced in the sea area of the New World, and it is not possible for ordinary pirates to compete with it. Navigator, take us out of this sea. Gerald, the captain of the White Dragon Fleet, yelled to the navigator on board. On the ship Hayden was aboard, Captain Gerard yelled and commanded the sailors in various positions. The deck was densely covered with a strong atmosphere of tension, heavy rain and waves, constantly slapped up, making everyone's body a little shaky. But Hayden at the moment. The hat on his head shielded some wind and rain, as if as long as the hat on his head was still there, the storm that was covering him at the moment would be no matter what happened to him. Wearing a hat, he is standing steadily on the bow. Withstand the fiercest waves and feel the scenery of the first-class cabin. In the most chaotic atmosphere on board at this time, Hayden, standing at the bow of the ship, suddenly remembered a more important question in his heart. On the black market in the Chambord Islands, the last information he obtained was only to tell him that Doflamingo was in the New World. But there is no information in that specific place. Okay. Hayden, who was a bit distressed, couldn't help frowning. Since there is no place that specializes in selling information, there is no information about Doflamingo. And that guy has grabbed the heavenly gold now. He must have prepared a hiding place well in advance, and that guy is still hiding from the world government. Advertisement. Hayden knew that it was impossible to find the trail of that guy right away by himself. Now, this is a problem. Hayden, who could not think of a solution for the time being, got down from the bow. Suddenly he noticed that it seemed that their fleet had already left the stormy sea area just now. Hayden didn't care much either. Those who often run into the New World, if they didn't have two brushes, they would have been swallowed by the sea halfway through. Captain. Hayden motioned to Gerard, who was taking a breather, to the side. Do you know that information is easy to get in that place? He spoke casually. Ha. Ha. Seeing Hayden approaching, Captain Gerard took a big breath, so as to make his speech easier. Intelligence, he repeated, trying to make sure whether he heard it wrong. That's right. Where is the intelligence of the New World generally obtained? Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. The captain understood his meaning now. Although he was still a little strange in his heart, didn't this level of boss come out without getting everything clear? The information of the New World. The information of the New World is generally in the middle of the New World route. Captain Gerard immediately told Hayden what he knew. As for the others, he didn't have a deep understanding. Middle half. Hayden, who got this answer, muttered to himself. Looking at the sea that suddenly became clear outside the ship, he was lost in thought. The paradise of the New World and the first half. Basically, it is divided from the middle position by the red soil continent, and the length of the two separated air routes is basically not much different. Advertisement. That is to say, if you want to go from the current starting position of the New World to the middle of the New World, at least it will take time from the starting point of the paradise to the middle of it. Moreover, this has not yet been counted. The bad climate of the New World far exceeds that of the paradise in the first half. When it finally arrives, it may take a few more days. Hayden didn't pay attention to Gerard or other things on the deck. Immediately I started a brainstorming in my mind, trying to use the brain power that might lead to baldness, thinking about the current situation and what good solutions are there. Doflamingo, World Government, New World, Heavenly Gold, Denon, Holy Land Maria. Before the storm in Hayden's mind took shape, he suddenly thought of one thing. Since Heavenly Gold was his primary goal, finding Doflamingo was only the second goal. And to whom is the Heavenly Gold ultimately handed over? Of course it was given to the Tinlongren, and the Tianlong people all live in the holy place of Mary Joa on the Red Earth continent. Then, in the end, the Heavenly Gold must be transported from some place to the Red Earth continent towering over the sky. As for the place where things can be transported, go directly to the Red Earth continent. In the past days, Hayden really sat on something like that once. That is the port that is located on the side of the New World, pasted on the red soil continental wall, and built Hong Kong. This huge port, together with the port on the side of the Paradise on the Red Earth continent, sandwiched the Red Earth continent. This is a route specially constructed by the world government to cross the Red Earth continent. Hayden was in the Navy before, and he hadn't heard of any other place, which was the route of the world government on the red soil continent. This also means that there is a 90% chance that in the end Heavenly Gold will definitely stay in Hong Kong. Suddenly thinking of this, the problem that plagued him disappeared. As expected of me, Hayden thought in his heart, with a smile on his face. Advertisement, however, before he had just laughed for 2 seconds. Thinking of Hong Kong, the information of another place naturally appeared in Hayden's mind: the New World Navy G1 branch. Gone. The G1 branch of New World is located just in front of Hong Kong. And where they are now, there are no signs of islands in front, back, left, or right. If their position after coming out of the bottom of the sea is close to Hong Kong, so they must have noticed the existence of Hong Kong at this time. On the contrary, if they haven't seen any signs of islands until now, then their position after coming out of the seabed is definitely not near Hong Kong, nor near branch G1. In other words, if Hayden is going to Hong Kong, he needs to go back. If you go back, you will definitely pass the G1 branch. Okay. The G1 branch of the New World, who are now stationed in the Navy. Hayden was there for a while and couldn't think of those people who were the Navy in the G1 branch. Generally, the configuration of this branch should not be changed too frequently in 3 years. The current Navy guarding the G1 branch should basically be the configuration of 3 years ago. But who are those? Hayden frowned, he still couldn't think of any name. It seemed that he had to be more careful when passing by. Thinking about this, Hayden planned to leave the White Dragon fleet directly. Afterwards, he took a record pointer directly from the fleet. Chapter 252, Heavenly Gold. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. After Hayden took a pointer and left the White Dragon fleet, he started directly, and flew in the air in the opposite direction pointed by the 3 pointers, which is the starting position of the New World. Be careful to avoid thunder-intensive areas, bypass areas with stormy weather, and finally carefully bypass the very conspicuous, overall navy blue G1 branch. After a while, in the end, Hayden's front line of sight finally saw the red rocks of the Red Earth continent. The huge Red Earth continent that spans the entire world and towering over the sky appeared right in front of him at this moment. Then, as the distance gets closer, the picture in the line of sight becomes clear. Hayden saw it, pasted the port on the red soil continental wall in front. On the relatively calm sea below, there are 2 or 3 single ships. Of course, these ships are basically serious merchant ships. To avoid being noticeable, when Hayden had not yet arrived at the Red Harbor, he lowered the height of the step-off ahead of time, and landed on the stern of the ship below, without attracting any attention from the people on board. After that, the ship arrived at Hong Kong. What catches the eye is the soap bubbles that slowly rise into the air, constantly making the popping sound of bubbles. Under such a background, what I saw next was a huge world government pattern on the Red Earth continental rock wall pasted by the port, indicating that this place is within the scope of the world government. The huge port of Hong Kong is planted with 2 smaller versions of Yakuman mangroves. This is also the reason for the continuous secretion of bubbles from the ground. The reason why the world government planted 2 mangroves. It is precisely because the tools needed to board the Red Earth continent need to use this special bubble to make a pod that resembles a binaural teapot, and then slowly board the Red Earth continent. At the same time, this is the only way to go to the Red Earth continent. Advertisement. Hayden relied on his own domineering experience, avoiding the observation of nearby people, and quietly set foot on the land of Hong Kong. Hong Kong is the only way to cross the red soil mainland, which also means that tourists here want to be more. Fortunately, there are many people in the One Piece world who love strange dressing. He would not be able to hide Hayden with a hat, and he would appear too abrupt among the crowd, attracting unwanted attention. I scanned the situation in Hong Kong at the same time with seeing, hearing, color and spiritual pressure. It seems that there are no people that need special attention. After that, Hayden found a relatively remote hotel in Hong Kong and paid to stay. Time passed quickly. That night, Hayden is planning to rest directly. However, leaning on the pillow, he suddenly heard a commotion outside the window. Strange. He chose this relatively quiet hotel nearby for the sake of quietness and concealment. Why is it getting dark, but the streets outside are still noisy? Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Hayden got up from the bed, stood by the window, opened a small slit, and looked out to the street. Then I saw it, illuminated by the streetlights on the street outside. There was a small team of men in uniform black suits, knocking from door to door, as if to warn the people living in the house. Boom boom boom. The door of the hotel on the first floor was knocked sharply. Hayden, who was sitting on the second floor, quickly opened the door and walked to the side of the stairs, listening to the voices of people coming from below. Tomorrow, every household is not allowed to go out, and no one can appear on the street. This is an order of the world government. Advertisement. There was no trace of emotion in the tone of the person who spoke. After speaking, the man didn't care about the hotel owner's thoughts, closed the door and left the hotel, and then walked to the next place with the sound of footsteps. This situation does not require Hayden to think about it. For the nobles in the world, the only route to cross the Red Earth continent has been temporarily martial law. He immediately realized that something important to the world government is likely to happen tomorrow here. Hayden did not expect that in this period, apart from the issue of heavenly gold, there would be other things that would make the world government nervous. The night passed quickly, and a new day arrived on time. Similarly, the newsbird that delivered newspapers came on time. Hayden went down to the first floor of the hotel and took a newspaper from the hotel owner. While eating breakfast, he opened the latest newspaper today. However, the front page of the newspaper. A photo of Doflamingo is being published impressively, with the headline in bold words, "The Birth of the New Kiwahai, Don Quixote Doflamingo." Kiwahai. 1 or 2 seconds after seeing this report, Hayden immediately understood the meaning of the news. That is to say, that guy Doflamingo, and the wrangling with the people of the world government, had already pulled out a result. The world government gets the original celestial gold. The guy Doflamingo got the title of Kiwahai he wanted, or it could be said that he got the special rights of Kiwahai he wanted. Did heavenly gold arrive today? Hayden frowned and thought. Otherwise, those people from the world government would not choose to empty Hong Kong as an important port today. Thinking of this layer, the corners of Hayden's mouth couldn't help but raised a slight arc. Advertisement at the same time, he couldn't help but feel fortunate in his heart. After being rejected by the king of the Fisherman Island, he also came up with the idea of staying on the Fisherman Island for a few more days. Fortunately, he dispelled it. Otherwise, waiting for him to come again then, it is estimated that waiting for him will only be lonely. 10 minutes passed. Hayden saw and realized that a ship slowly appeared in the sea near Hong Kong. He stayed in the hotel. After learning about this, he didn't even think about it, and went straight out of the hotel where he was staying. Relying on the domineering perception of seeing and hearing, Hayden avoided the people of the world government waiting on the street, and walked carefully all the way to the vicinity of the port, a hidden place where the line of sight was just right to see where the ships anchored in the port. After a while, that ship was just a smaller ship just now. At this moment, in Hayden's line of sight, it was magnified several times, revealing a huge golden ship like a tall building. Good deed, the dragon boat is magnificent. Even Hayden couldn't help being surprised by the aura emanating from this ship. I want to make one too. He thought about it in his heart, and then continued to look at the ship, trying to see clearly who was on the deck of that ship. However, he hadn't waited for Hayden to turn his gaze on the deck of the approaching ship. The figure standing on the bow of this huge ship instantly attracted Hayden's full attention. Impressively, there was a big bird with pink feathers, with a wild expression, standing steadily on the bow. Doflamingo. With an unexpected smile on Hayden's face, he silently read the name of the man at the bow. Chapter 253 I'm coming. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. What a coincidence. Gazing at the figure of Doflamingo on the bow, Hayden couldn't help being happy. He seemed to be scornful of the world, and only that guy could do him. However, Hayden really didn't expect that Doflamingo, after getting what he wanted, would personally deliver the heavenly gold. Is it someone who needs to talk to the world government about something in person?
The time passed every second. After noticing Doflamingo's figure, Hayden immediately noticed that after the big golden ship that should be loaded with heavenly gold, he followed a navy ship that was usually huge but very small at this moment. Of course, it is impossible for the navy to exist in the fleet that transports heavenly gold. For these situations, Hayden had already thought of it in advance. However, he didn't have a name in his mind as to which navy was guarding this batch of heavenly gold. Some navies are good ones, and some are bad ones. May things develop in good terms. Hayden stared at the approaching ship, thinking to himself.
At this moment, he also noticed another thing. It seemed that Doflamingo was the only one to come. Seeing and hearing the color did not perceive, there are other people behind Doflamingo.
In short, these less important details are probably the case. The overall hull trim is a golden transport ship, which is parked in the port of Hong Kong. The distance was getting closer, and Hayden, who was thinking about how to tow the ship away, had a rough estimate of the size. It was also a three-masted galleon, but it was 1.2 times larger than the Spanish galleon in the previous White Dragon fleet. Those rims that shone with dazzling golden light. Hayden was 90% sure, and suspected that the trim on the boat was definitely not made of a thin layer of gold, but pure gold. Advertisement immediately afterwards. The golden ship in the sky arrived ashore, and the naval warship behind it also stopped in the harbor. However, apart from Doflamingo, who was standing at the bow of the ship, he walked steadily and fell on the ground of the harbor from the bow of the ship. No one else walked down from the ship carrying the gold from the sky. On the Navy's warships, at this time, a team of Navy dressed in justice coats stepped down. Who is it? Hayden thought about this, and he immediately focusing on the Navy who had stepped off the warship. The man walking in the middle of the group of Navy. Wearing a hat on his head, why does his face look like Harry? Why is there a tail behind? Hayden was puzzled. But as the group of navies set foot on the harbor and came to a position in front of the harbor, narrowing the distance from the hidden place where Hayden is now, Hayden suddenly saw who the middle navy was. Lieutenant General Dalmisia. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Damn, Hayden murmured. Seeing Lieutenant General Dalmisia not far away at this moment, wearing a spotted cap and always maintaining the form of an orc, Hayden instantly reminded Hayden of his previous Navy days. It happened suddenly. When he left the Navy, he didn't have any chance to talk to Smog, Tina, Quee and others. And now in his situation, it is impossible to meet them. However, in the subsequent situation, he is likely to need all the help he can get. Lieutenant Admiral Dalmisia, with several men behind him, came to the place where Doflamingo was standing with the man in white at this moment, that is, the place where he went up the harbor stairs. As for who is wearing white clothes, although Hayden had never dealt with people in their department before in the Navy, he knew that those should be the CP0 of the world government, but he didn't know the specific name. Advertisement at this moment. Pirate, Doflamingo. Navy, Lieutenant General Dalmisia. World government, unknown. All three parties gathered on the port of Hong Kong. In addition, there is no unrelated person in Hong Kong, that is, ordinary people. But Hayden looked at the unexpected appearance of Lieutenant General Dalmisia, and he hesitated. He didn't want to kill Quee's father. This was not in his anticipation. He originally planned to wait for the heavenly gold to come, and then directly kill any guy who blocked him, and then directly take the heavenly gold away. But now, he really didn't expect an acquaintance to appear. Headache. Hayden, who was hiding in a dark corner and observing the situation, thought hard for a while. If anything can be resolved after a violent meal, that would be great. This batch of heavenly gold is the fastest among all the channels to obtain Pele. Use the bounty criminal to redeem the bounty. If you are not wanted, you can quickly gather a large amount of Bailey. Other methods, black eat black? Isn't the gold in the sky the biggest black to eat black? Hayden couldn't wait now, and took his time step by step. He hopes that the time to achieve the goal is as short as possible. Heavenly gold is the best way for him to obtain funding sources. Although Tianshang gold is gathered by the world government to squeeze the franchise countries of the world, it can't control so much now. Staring at Doflamingo, who was talking about something, Hayden was lost in thought. He thought about it, somehow, a person's name suddenly popped out of his mind: Golden Emperor. Correct. Advertisement. Hayden made the motion of hammering his hands in his heart. how he had never thought of this person's existence before. Simply put, the guy named Golden Emperor, the final enemy in one of the theatrical versions of One Piece. A person with golden fruit ability, in other words, he can control gold. In the theater version, he owns 20% of Bailey in the entire One Piece world, and eats black and white. Although the Golden Emperor is a theatrical character. But in this real One Piece world, his existence may be somewhat different, but it is not non-existent. And why Hayden thought of the existence of this person, his emotions suddenly aroused. Naturally, because this guy with the title, Golden Emperor, he has money. Where is this guy now? Hayden immediately began to think about whether there was any information about this guy in his brain. Find that guy. For Hayden, it means finding a golden river that will never dry up. In other words, it is Bailey, which represents money in the world of One Piece, basically has no meaning to him. With the thoughts back, the real time has not passed too much. Hayden looked again at the side where Doflamingo and the people of the world government were talking. In his heart, after thinking of the Emperor of Gold, in fact, he was not too concerned about heavenly gold. Although all came, there is no reason to go back empty-handed. It's just that from the mentality of just getting it, desperate to get it. It became, even if you can only get a little bit later, attitude. Chapter 254 Yo, hello everyone. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. At this moment, Hayden suddenly noticed that Doflamingo seemed to have finished talking about the matter, and he wanted to leave. Oh, you guys can't leave here, Hayden said to himself. Although there is still Lieutenant General Dalmesia, the one he doesn't want to attack, but his debut skills, Lieutenant General, should be able to resist it. Thinking like this, he quietly walked out of the hiding place. However, as soon as he walked out, none of the people waiting for the world government near the port immediately noticed the sudden appearance of Hayden. Aim with both hands in the direction of the harbor, pointing towards Doflamingo's body. For an instant, the majestic reinforcement suddenly accumulated in front of Hayden's palm. A dazzling blue light suddenly bloomed in front of Hayden. And such a dazzling blue light suddenly appeared, of course, the scope of influence spread to the dock where Doflamingo and others were at this moment. What is that? Doflamingo, is it you guy? Lieutenant General Dalmesia of the Navy, and people from the world government, immediately questioned Doflamingo. The blue light that appeared in the eyes at this moment was very unknown to both of them. And Doflamingo, he also reacted similarly to the two of them. He frowned and looked at the blue light, without answering the questions of the two people next to him. But his silence, at this moment, was also an answer to both the Navy and the world government. He didn't know what that thing was. Almost less than a second passed. Just in Doflamingo and Dalmesia, as well as people from the world government, the idea of wanting to leave the place just arose in their hearts. Advertisement. At this time, Hayden's breaking road was ready to be completed in just over a second. The 88 broken road flying dragon strikes thieves sky-shaking thunder cannon. The faint voice fell. The spiritual pressure energy accumulated in Hayden's hands at this moment suddenly resembled a long dragon constructed entirely of thunder. After a terrifying scream, it struck the air in the blink of an eye and came to Doflamingo and others the location. The huge and pure thunder energy even shook the ground of Hong Kong at this moment. A long ravine was melted from the road where he passed, leaving a charred black ground. Next moment, the thunder hit something and was blocked from moving forward. Immediately afterwards, a strong explosion appeared immediately in the form of skyrocketing. A billowing smoke, along with the sparks raised by the explosion, spread out and swept the area around the explosion. Hayden, who broke the road, squinted to cover the wind and sand, staring at the place where the explosion rose. He was waiting for someone to come out. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. He also knew that this simple attack would not directly kill anyone. If he wanted to directly kill the three gathered there, he wouldn't show up in advance, and at the same time put on a very strong attack. This move just means that he is coming, and let Dalmesia Lieutenant General, Quincy's father, avoid a little. Puff, 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 3 bursts of smoke sounded immediately. At the same time, there was also the sound of this violent explosion that shocked everyone on the Red Harbor. For a time, the entire Hong Kong was messed up into a pot of porridge. Advertisement. The purest and sharpest cry of a baby, the sound of various doors and windows colliding, and the noisy footsteps that seemed to shake the ground. Anyway, all kinds of noise, all mixed into a huge momentum at this moment. Hayden couldn't help frowning. Hong Kong is said to be a huge port, but in fact, if you look at it by the standards of a battlefield, it can probably be described by the size of a toilet at home. The break he made just now was because, behind Doflamingo and the others was the sea, he dared to launch it directly like this. Otherwise, the Hong Kong will be sunk by them before they have waited for a few minutes. Who are you, guy? For the three people who broke out of the explosion, Doflamingo took the lead in raising the two people next to him and asked Hayden. The expression on his face was not very beautiful. He noticed that the attack just now seemed to be directed at him. Next to him, Lieutenant Admiral Dalmesia, he also showed a serious expression. As for the people of the world government, his face makes people invisible any emotions. And Hayden. He still wears a hat on his head, making the three people standing face to face with him at the moment unable to determine the identity of the attacker. Ha ha ha. Hayden under the hat chuckled twice. In his mind, he imagined the scene where his true face was revealed for the first time 3 years later. Are you surprised? Still surprised? 3 years later, Hayden was not afraid of anyone who wanted to take his life. This moment. Hayden's chuckle was noisy around the moment, and it was filled with a hint of fear, making it particularly abrupt. The laughter of the man in the hat. Doflamingo, Lieutenant General Dalmesia, and the world government did not think of anyone they knew. The intent of the man in the hat was obviously the gold on the boat behind him, otherwise the guy would attack them inexplicably. The three of them began to wonder who the man in the hat was, and who was so bold that he dared to be enemies of all three of them at the same time. Advertisement at the same time, the three of them coincided with each other, focusing part of their attention on the surrounding environment, to guard against the attacks of this person's accomplices. As for the person in the hat, it is very likely that one person committed the crime, and the three of them have not yet dared to think of this level. Yo. Hayden waved to the three people not far in front of him. This time, it's really been a long time since I saw you, everyone, he said with a smile. Words fall. He swiped the hat that covered his face on top of his head and flicked it back. The silk thread hanging around his neck prevented the hat from falling, and he revealed his face. He had clean black hair, a black eye mask on his left eye, and a long scar on his cheek. Under the changes of these external factors, Hayden was born with the face. Dalmesia and Doflamingo, as well as people from the world government, all have a deep memory. Hayden. Dalmesia exclaimed. That kid. Doflamingo's mouth raised an unknown arc. It's you. The expression in the white costume was startled. The three of them had the same reaction with some slight differences. Hayden made a nasal sound, watching the reactions of the three of them, and nodded, expressing his satisfaction with the reactions of the three of them. But the shocked three people did not launch an offensive against him in an instant as Hayden had imagined in his mind. The stunned three were still stunned. Or was he too shocked by his sudden appearance, Hayden thought. Then, since they didn't say anything, he was not welcome. Chapter 255 It's You? Previous chapter Next chapter. Advertisement The three people on Doflamingo's side were all stunned at this moment. The soldiers of the world government in Hong Kong, and the Marines who followed the commander from the warship, they all swarmed to the explosion site. It was almost just a short moment. All the soldiers formed a circle where Hayden was standing, trapping him inside. Of course, the three Doflamingo who got together are also in this circle. It's just that the people around are their own people. Now, all the soldiers raised their weapons, and the two spears of different standards were immediately held in their hands, showing a circle of black hole muzzles. They put their fingers on the trigger and did not squeeze it. However, only waiting for an order from their commander, the bullets in the long gun could shoot at the attacker at the moment in his mind at a super high speed. With the current situation where they surrounded the attacker, a firepower with no dead ends would then pour toward that person, and there was no place to hide. Hayden looked sideways at the surroundings, and there was no nervousness. The aura of these soldiers is very good, but for him now, even if it was 3 years ago, it won't work. Hayden temporarily turned his attention away from the three people not far in front. Focus on your own body, on the spiritual pressure surging in your body. At this time, the three people on Doflamingo's side finally recovered from the shock. However, as they recovered,
they looked at Hayden at the same moment, as if they had noticed that something was going to happen to him. Then, at this moment when the time seemed to be slowed down, Hayden closed his eyes. Advertisement. After less than a breath, he opened his eyes suddenly. A spiritual pressure that appeared in the form of a strong wind suddenly swept and swallowed with Hayden as its center. Reinforcement rolled up the sand and dust in the ground, adding chaos to the squally wind.
The next moment, under this strong, visible gust of wind,
like a gale appearing out of thin air in the Red Harbor, it seems that there is some kind of soul-harvesting monster hidden in it. Anyone who was blown by the spirit pressure, all fell to the ground in the blink of an eye when the gale disappeared, one after another, puffing and puffing. Then, in less than 2 or 3 seconds, all the soldiers who were still near Hayden just now had trapped him to death. After the violent wind passed, they all temporarily lost their sober consciousness. Naturally, there was no threat at all. Overlord. No, although this thing seems to be the influence of Overlord, look, it is a little different. Doflamingo stared at Hayden's figure, thinking to himself about the influence he had just received. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi, same. Next to him, Lieutenant General Dalmesia, and the white-clothed people of the world government, they couldn't help but calm their faces and wondered in their hearts what abilities this guy had just used. But at the same time, they looked right in front of them. It was the real person who appeared in front of them with the information in their minds. The person in white immediately shouted at Hayden, "Today is the day when you are desperate." In the past 3 years, in order to catch the person who appeared in front of him at this moment, the world government has not stopped the search for a moment. For this reason, he, as a member of the world government, has also had no good lives. However, this is all up to today. Advertisement. The anger that this guy has been hiding for so long, and the excitement that he will be here today and get a promotion after catching this person.
All the emotions hidden in his heart, all erupted at this moment, as he moved in his footsteps, and appeared on his face. The figure of the person in the white costume flickered.
After a swish, his body suddenly appeared in front of Hayden as if teleporting. For an instant, Doflamingo and Dalmesia, the two of them looked at Hayden, and they were immediately obscured by this person's back. A smile appeared on Doflamingo's face. Then, the person who appeared in front of Hayden. In the next moment, his whole body immediately kicked the whip that was aimed directly at Hayden's head from an exaggerated angle.
Plap. There was a sound like the sound of the clothes on the body too fast.
Hayden raised his left hand and steadily caught the fierce kick with the palm of his hand, without even moving his footsteps slightly. The toe of the attacking shoe stopped a dozen centimeters from Hayden's ear. Immediately afterwards, the leg wind generated by this powerful kick, after being stopped by Hayden, immediately blasted towards the house beside him. Rushing. There was a burst of glass exploding, and then there was a loud sound. I saw that all the windows on this side of the house were all destroyed by the gust of wind that came from a distance of more than 20 meters from its location. It seems that you are not a member of CP0. Hayden, who held the man's calf in his palm, looked directly at the man's eyes and said, using a voice that only he could hear. Advertisement. Although there is no one who has seen CP0, is it as powerful as the rumors? But Hayden thought, anyway, it would definitely not be like the strength shown by the guy in front of him. It seems that this guy is just a person who likes to wear a white costume. How do you guys know? The man whose one leg was temporarily controlled by the enemy, he heard the word CP0, and was surprised that he couldn't care about the current situation for a while. At the same time, in front of the two in stalemate, the place where Doflamingo and Lieutenant Admiral Dalmesia. The two of them looked at Hayden's defensive movements and judged from the information revealed by his body movements. Although they had not seen Hayden for a long time, the actions of this guy could still make them judge out, this guy is definitely Hayden. However, the identity of the attacker has now been completely determined. This situation is not an excellent situation for Dalmesia himself. Hayden is a kid who grew up with his son Quincy. He can be regarded as yes, and has been watching this kid grow up since he was a child. This kid has become a reward criminal now, and his job as a Navy is to catch the reward criminal, but now this moment makes him take action against this kid. He has hesitation in his heart. And Doflamingo, who was next to him, saw the admiral next to him, who was a little hesitant about the man in Hayden, and his face suddenly raised an inexplicable smile. "Why, are you familiar with it before?" he asked Total Messia, although he was roughly certain in his heart. He likes this very much. It will not appear under normal circumstances, with a touch of drama.
Chapter 256 Won't You Come Up? Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. But Dalmesia saw it, but the pirate Doflamingo was very unpleasant.
But this guy has now become Chi Wuai, and he can only look calm at the moment and give Doflamingo a stern look. Go to Hayden's side. Hayden had no intention of answering this man's question. He did not speak, and withdrew his gaze from the person's eyes, without even looking at the person straight. He held the left hand of his calf and immediately used his strength. Hayden wanted to follow the current situation, control one leg of this person, and directly attacked this person with his right hand, eliminating this person at once.
However, this person in this white costume does not seem to be a member of CPO.
But since this guy has been assigned by the world government to hand over the heavenly gold, he also has a considerable degree of strength. Bang! Sounded. He slammed his legs under Hayden's grasp, and then broke away from Hayden's palms. With the help of this force, he took advantage of the force to make a big spin of his body, turning the whole body like a top. Immediately afterwards, a strong small whirlwind immediately appeared from the person's rotating body. But Hayden wouldn't let this guy give him a kick again. At the moment when it suddenly turned into a whirlwind attack, it was about to hit his body. Advertisement. Same. Hayden's right leg was raised to an exaggerated angle, and he swiftly turned toward the man who was so fast that his figure was blurred, kicking out a kick. Two strong shocks collided immediately. A loud noise that shook the air immediately erupted at the point of impact. The person of the world government whose body turned into a small spinning top really seemed to have become a small spinning top, the whip that Hayden had turned into a whip, and drew it fiercely behind him. Boom! The man's rotating body was crushed and disintegrated by Hayden's kick, and flew backwards towards Doflamingo and Dalmesia. Of course, Doflamingo and Dalmesia, neither of them had the help of the person who flew back from the team. At the same time, it is also at this time. Hayden didn't say a word, and his figure suddenly disappeared in place. But instead of attacking towards Doflamingo and others in front, he stepped in the direction of the ship loaded with gold in the harbor. In order to attract the three of them to come, take advantage of the situation to transfer the battlefield from Hongang to the sea. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Doflamingo and Dalmesia were blocked by the man who flew back, and did not notice Hayden's disappearance for the first time. After the next second, they sensed Hayden, who was still not far in front of them. At this moment, he appeared above the golden ship, standing on the mast of that ship, looking down at them. "Hey, aren't you coming up?" Hayden's flat voice spread far. Hearing this man's provocative voice, the man in white who had already stopped the inverted flight at the moment, he did not even think. His footsteps slammed on the ground, his body jumped high, and his feet stepped on the air. Similarly, Lieutenant General of the Dalmesia Navy Headquarters, he slowed down the white-clothed man a step, followed him, and set off in the direction of Hayden. Advertisement. As for Doflamingo, he immediately understood Hayden's true intentions. If this kid had come to trouble, or trouble with the Navy and the world government, he should have come, not at such a delicate point in time, just to come to the New World's Hong Kong. When he came here, obviously only the golden thing in the sky would attract this kid to come here. But he didn't know what this kid was going to do with heavenly gold, but he knew one thing now, one thing that made him stand still. This kid obviously didn't want the fighting between them to spread to other people on Hongang. Anyway, the golden ship in the sky stopped at the port of Hongang, and the kid couldn't get away. As long as he stood on the Hongang, he would naturally destroy his intentions.
Doflamingo was still standing on the spot, watching the three people standing on the golden mast in the sky, with a slanted smile on his face. Then, on the mast where the sails have been retracted,
Hayden and Dalmesia, as well as the white-clothed man of the world government, were on top of this at the moment, staring at each other closely. At this time, the atmosphere in the air maintained a strange and tacit silence. Hayden noticed Lieutenant General Dalmesia's eyes looking directly at him. He had no thoughts of nostalgia in his heart, nor could he think of any more suitable words to speak.
After a while, he simply said to Lieutenant General Dalmisia,
Uncle Da, you are now in the Navy, and I know you won't just stand on the sidelines like this. At the same time, you are also Quiddy's father, and I don't want to take action against you. The current situation is purely coincidental. However, I know the current situation, so I will offend it later. Gazing at the current appearance of Hayden, Dalmisia said with a calm face, Boy, you shouldn't be here, you have been hiding for 3 years, why are you showing up now? Complex emotions. Since this kid has been hiding for 3 years, why did he choose this time to come out? Although now in the ocean, news about this kid rarely appears, and it can even be said that in some places, no one mentions it anymore. Advertisement. 2 Tianlongren died suddenly, and the world was shocked. Then there were searches conducted by the world government all over the world, which caused panic in many places. After that, the world government never found Hayden others, and the news about Hayden naturally faded away. After the death of the 2 Tianlongren in the world, except for the unusual chaos of the sea during a certain period of time after the incident, the world did not have the kind of huge changes visible to the naked eye. What it was like before, what it is still like now.
Naturally, in some places, no one was ahead of schedule, the guy who had killed 2 Celestials back then. But, for the people of the world government and navy, the search has never been suspended once. Dalmisia knew what this kid was like in normal times.
According to the strength of this kid he had known before, 3 years ago, this kid didn't know what method he used to escape from the hands of the generals of the warring states period. At the same time, the speed of this kid's strength growth is faster than he has never seen before.
Since this kid dared to show up at this time, and as soon as he appeared, he once again attracted the attention of the Tianlongren, which probably means that his current strength is no longer afraid of the admiral's pursuit.
In other words, it is. This kid already has the confidence to fight against the world government.
The appearance of Hayden now would mean chaos again.
This kid can't be easily caught by them, and the world government will never stop easily after learning about him.
The conflict between the two parties continued to intensify.
This time, the area affected by the time will probably not only suffer from a single place in the Chambord Islands, it is estimated that the entire sea will boil. Chapter 257 See-Through. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Dalmisia. He didn't want to see the sea plunge into further chaos again. But likewise, he couldn't think of any way to stop the wave that was about to sweep and engulf the entire world. At this moment in the atmosphere of chat, the man in the white dress of the world government saw the face of this lieutenant admiral with an expression similar to Tangled. He couldn't believe it. Come on with me. There was a hint of anger and surprise in his tone, and at the same time, there was a large part of the condescending tone that is unique to the world government. Lieutenant General Dalmisia, he is not the first day he joined the Navy, nor is it the first time he has worked with people from the world government. Although in this case, their navy is lower than the people of the world government, but he will not bear the attitude of this guy to him. Dalmisia glared directly at the people of the world government, and a trace of oppression that made him unable to resist silence flashed in his eyes. But, Dalmisia, still following the people of the world government, launched an attack in Hayden's direction. But for some reason, Dalmisia's pace has always been slower than the people of the world government and lags behind. Bang bang bang. Several bursts of footsteps in the air sounded. The figures of Dalmisia and the world government dashed across the mast and headed straight towards Hayden. However, Hayden watched the attack coming straight towards him. He didn't immediately assume a defensive position or a dodge position, and even he didn't pull out the 2 Zhanpai knives hanging around his waist.
Bang bang. People from Dalmisia and the world government rushed in front of Hayden one after another. The man in white holds his breath and concentrates.
Advertisement. Tighten the entire right arm, and at this moment, the whole body's strength was poured into the arm, with a clang sound, like the sound of metal scraping suddenly. His muscled right arm was immediately immersed in it. The armor color is dark and shiny with metallic luster and domineering. The air was torn apart by the man's clenched right fist, making a strange noise. But, Hayden watched this man's attack. Even though he was less than a meter away in front of him at this moment, he could even see the wind of the guy's fist hitting his face. Still no panic. Then, the next moment, he moved. His head was slightly leaned to the left, while his right arm was raised and placed at the same height as his head. The same effect of armed hardening and domineering appeared on his right arm. Hiss hiss. A violent sound of metal rubbing sounded. The white man's fist wiped the back of Hayden's hand and slid back. The violent friction sparked a burst of sparks and sputtered out. In this extremely short moment. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. The expression on Hayden's face did not change, and he glanced lightly at the man in white who attacked him in front of him. The eyes of the two immediately collided. There was nothing in Hayden's eyes. The eyes of the white-clothed man was always burning with anger.
The next moment, the arms of the two are still in contact.
Hayden suddenly pushed his right arm out. In the absence of room for force, he simply relied on the strength of Superman's arms to directly push the person who attacked him in front of him.
And in the eyes of Dalmisia, who was a step slower behind.
Advertisement. The attack, the defense, and the counterattack just now all ended in less than 2 or 3 seconds. In his eyes, the person sent by the world government seemed to be unable to help Hayden at all. He didn't even hit the attack, and he was shot and flew out in an instant. Immediately afterwards, Dalmisia's attack also hit Hayden after a second delay. In the form of an orc, he opened the sharp claws of his right hand and slashed towards Hayden's chest fiercely. The sharp thorns on the 5 fingers, like a shining silver blade, suddenly made 5 slender slashes visible to the naked eye in the air. And Hayden, who had never moved a step in the air, didn't want to break this at this time. Facing the 5 slashes that were slashed diagonally, Hayden's lower body was like the roots of a giant tree, and his upper body immediately slid to the side to avoid the attack of the 5 slashes. At this time, the man in white clothes who was pushed out by Hayden stopped his regressive figure, banged a moon step, and stabilized his body in the air. An anger immediately rose on his face. Is this kid playing with him? This kid is definitely playing with him. He rushed straight in the direction of Hayden again, ready to give Hayden another move. However, at this moment, Hayden's attention at this time was not focused on the 2 people who were in the air with him. Because he realized that the fellow Doflamingo, why hasn't he followed at this time?
Hayden moved, once again someone who dodged the world government.
While avoiding, he didn't even look at this guy, and he didn't pay attention to this person, or Lieutenant General Dalmisia.
Hayden shifted his gaze to the direction of Red Harbor below.
I saw that Doflamingo was standing in the harbor, looking at his direction with a smile on his face.
This moment, the eyes of the 2 people who were far apart collided. Hayden seemed to be able to see through the pink sunglasses on his face, behind his lenses, Doflamingo's real, smiley eyes full of inexplicable meaning. Hayden suddenly wanted to understand. I figured out what Doflamingo guy was thinking about now, and what he was laughing at. That guy knew what was not good for him under the current situation.
Understanding his concerns about the safety of ordinary people in Hongang directly led to him not daring to make direct moves on Hongang. Both sides understand that if they hand in hand, it will definitely cause a lot of damage. In this way, some collateral damage cannot be avoided. As long as Doflamingo stood in the Red Harbor and guarded, he could basically destroy Hayden's action. Hayden's face sank suddenly. At the beginning, he planned to use his first appearance to attract firepower, then move the battlefield along the way, and then immediately eliminate Doflamingo and the people of the world government. However, in this way, his intention was directly discovered by Doflamingo, which means that the current situation is very unfavorable for him. And this is not conducive to what he is referring to, the time that has been flowing. Although a group of small soldiers was shocked with reinforcement just now, they were unable to contact the reinforcements by phone worm in the first place. However, he doesn't know how long it will take for the soldier in this situation to wake up.
Besides, in this case, it is very difficult for Hayden, who has only one person, to block news in this area. Deterring the little soldier is only one method he can do and know.
As soon as the news spreads, the Holy Land Mary Joa will be on their heads now.
And it seems that there are several powerful naval roles in Mariejoa, and the Navy headquarters is on the other side of the Red Earth continent. For the Navy and the world government, it does not take much time to cross the Red Earth continent. If all the people are here at that time, he will not be able to stand up for a while, and so many people will attack in a swarm. Chapter 258 1-1 Previous chapter Next chapter. Advertisement Damn it. It's all the pirate Doflamingo. If you want to solve the battle quickly, you can only use powerful moves. It is impossible to have no collateral damage by using powerful moves against Doflamingo on the Red Harbor. The current situation is an endless loop, and there is no good way. Feeling a headache, Hayden retracted his gaze looking at the Red Harbor below, and returned 100% of his attention to the two people in the air in front of him. Now Doflamingo is the one he needs to deal with most urgently, and the two people in front of him. Uncle Da, how offended, Hayden said simply, using a voice in the air that could be heard by Dalmesia on the opposite side. Then, like the sound of a gust of wind blowing through the air. Hayden's figure suddenly disappeared where he was originally, as if the strong wind that appeared just now took him away.
At the same time, the man in white who was attacking Hayden, because of Hayden's sudden disappearance, he directly rushed into the air, and the attack hit a cloud of air. Next moment, when the two people in the air did not respond in time, Hayden, who disappeared, came to the back of Lieutenant General Dalmesia. The flow of time seems to slow down at this moment. At least in Hayden's eyes, time seemed to slow down at this moment.
He could see the lieutenant in front of him, had already sensed his movement, and was making a head-turning motion. He can also see that in front of the lieutenant general at this moment, the people of the world government will also be aware of his current position and are making preparations to sprint. But, for Hayden, the palm of his right hand was suddenly close together and tightened, making a hand-knife posture, and the effect of the armed color suddenly appeared. Next second, looking at the back of Lieutenant General Dalmesia's neck in front of him, he slashed straight down. The pitch-black hand-knife pushed aside the air. It looks like it is very slow, but in fact the speed of this attack surpasses Dalmesia's reflex nerves. Dalmesia didn't have time to defend, but under instinctive control, he immediately covered the back of his upper body with armed domineering. The hand knife is directly in the middle of the aiming point. Boom! An explosive roar suddenly exploded and spread in the sky. After being hit, Dalmesia's eyes were immediately hit by this heavy blow, and he was temporarily unconscious, lost his sober consciousness, and his eyes turned white. His body, the strong impact transmitted from this hand knife, like a falling meteorite, hit the Navy ship below.
After another rumbling sound, Dalmesia was smashed down from the deck of the warship, and a big hole was directly smashed. Afterwards, a burst of sawdust flew, mixed with heavy smoke and dust, spreading over the warship. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi at the same time.
After the time returned to the original situation, the people of the world government, his attack also rushed over, just at the first point after Hayden stunned Lieutenant General Dalmesia. However, for Hayden, dealing with the people of the world government, then he does not need to resort to non-lethal, only stunning methods. The man in white concentrated all his attention on Hayden's head, holding his breath, tightening the muscles of his right leg, and infusing and moving all the strength that his body can mobilize onto his right leg. Boom! The next moment, he directed Hayden's head and swept a powerful whip kick once again.
However, Hayden knelt down suddenly, avoiding the roaring whip leg that scraped the air above his head. At the same time, he also held the hilt of Shirayuki's knife at the waist on his left hand with his right hand, and the scabbard of Shirayuki's knife with his left hand.
Advertisement then, at this moment like an electric flint. Hayden pulled out a bit of Shirayuki's blade with his right hand, and slightly raised his head to stare at the man who attacked him in front of him.
There seemed to be some surprise in his eyes because he avoided him and attacked more fiercely than before.
Hayden still had an indifferent expression on his face. After the whip leg left the area above his head, he immediately stood up, and at the same time as he stood up, he also took the opportunity to completely pull out the sleeve Shirayuki from the scabbard, and then calmly raised the blade. Shu Baishui's ordinary blade slashed across the person in front of him. Then Hayden didn't stop his sword dance. Holding Shirayuki's sleeve in his hand, he immediately swiped an afterimage in the space of about 50 centimeters in front of him. Then, it seemed that the time around Hayden had returned to normal. In the eyes of Doflamingo below, the people of the world government were immediately divided into two by Hayden's knife just now. At the same moment, A large amount of blood spattered from that person's body, at a distance of about 50 centimeters from the surface of Hayden's body, stopped the tendency of flying, as if hitting an invisible wall. No, it should be as if the blood water couldn't solve the boy's whole body at all, and it was disintegrated by something. Click. A slight noise suddenly appeared. This is the sound of Hayden as he slowly retracted the knife into its sheath in the sky. The sound also brought Doflamingo's thoughts back to the reality before him. Interestingly, that kid from a few years ago has grown to this point now. He sighed in his heart. Just now, between the boy's moves, he couldn't even see through the boy. In his scabbard, how much strength was hidden in his scabbard. But he has not fallen behind in the past few years either. Advertisement duo Fulangming thought. The eyes hidden under the pink sunglasses flashed an inexplicable smile, and the corners of his mouth were also arched. At the same time, Hayden, who was fighting his sword, turned his gaze to Doflamingo below. Now Lieutenant General Dalmesia and the people of the world government were solved by him, and in the end, only Doflamingo remained, and there was still some trouble to deal with. The eyes of the two hit each other again. It seems that there is no real object in the eyes, at this moment, like two laser beams, lacing out of each other's eyes. Boom. The non-existent laser beam, the sound of the collision sounded, seeming to stir up layers of airwaves in midair. Wrong. At this moment, it seemed that there was something in the air. At the midpoint between the two of them, there was a collision, which made a loud bang like an auditory hallucination just now. Rumble. The roar sounded again. This time it sounded continuously and continuously. Then, just in the eyes of all the people hiding in the house in Hong Kong, looking out the window. It was originally the light of broad daylight, but it suddenly went dark, and the entire Hong Kong lost its color at this moment. But then in the darkness, a strange red and black light burst out.
In the vicinity of the port, residents who can just see the direction of the port.
In the midair of the harbor, something like thunder appeared out of thin air, and the electric light still carried a terrifying red and black light. Chapter 259 Frontal Impact Previous chapter Next chapter. Advertisement This thunder was not hacked by nature. This is the overlord collision between Hayden and Doflamingo standing in the harbor. Of course, Hayden also has the domineering color, and the three colors are complete. Hayden's overlord color and Doflamingo's overlord color caused a collision at the midpoint between the two of them. Two terrifying auras ignited the red and black lightning that shook out of thin air at the center point. After a series of loud bangs, then a series of sizzling noises were emitted. At the same time, the imposing collision not only produced scary red and black lightning, but also spurred an unparalleled gust of wind, which immediately swept in all directions from the center of the collision and swallowed it out. Less than 3 or 4 seconds, the momentum began to affect the surrounding environment. On the ground around Doflamingo, the compact tiles began to crack. The windows of the surrounding houses near the port were all shattered in an instant, making a rattling sound. At the same time, the momentum was so strong that even the ships anchored in the harbor were blown, and the fixed hull was shaken a little. The sea surface near the sea was also blown out by waves of waves. Doflamingo's pink feather coat was blown behind him at this moment. Similarly, Hayden's Howry was blown loudly by this strong reversal momentum.
The space seems to have been smashed out of shock at this moment. A very gloomy atmosphere, like the tranquil atmosphere before the rainstorm, instantly enveloped the entire Honggang.
Hayden and Doflamingo's eyes collided. 4 eyes face each other. Both of them understand each other's next move, or what kind of action they will make. Advertisement Next moment. Bang. Bang. 2 sounds similar to air explosions suddenly resounded in Hong Kong. The two of them slammed their footholds at almost the same instant. Hayden stomped the air violently, and Doflamingo stomped to the ground. The two turned into sharp arrows, and started to shoot straight at the person who was locked in the shape of the center of their sight at the moment. Hayden pulled out his sleeve Shirayuki, but he didn't start to solve it. Doflamingo opened the 5 fingers of his right hand, and 5 almost invisible silk threads were immediately formed in his hand. The gap between the two of them drew closer. The scene agitated by the overlord color has not yet disappeared. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. In the eyes of the Hong Kong residents who slowly came after the window burst, the 2 figures in the sky immediately collided with each other head-on in the next second. Rumble. The Overlord color and the armed color collided at the same time domineeringly. At this moment, a scene even more terrifying than just the collision of the Overlord color was created. Red and black thunders spread around Hayden and Doflamingo, making terrifying noises. Hayden's dark blade slashed on the almost invisible silk thread, like a mass of air, but the blade could never go further towards Doflamingo's body. Now, the gap between the two of them may be less than 1 meter away. Doflamingo can see the look in Hayden's eyes at the moment, and Hayden can also see the expression on Doflamingo's face now. Advertisement. Hayden stared at Dover, and Dover stared at Hayden.
The attack of the two was in a stalemate, and the blade and the silk thread rubbed a lot of sparks in the air.
Looking at Hayden in front of him, Doflamingo's face raised a big smile.
Little devil, you were really lucky at that time. How did it feel to survive by luck? His tone was full of provocation. Mention the incident that Hayden escaped from his hands a few years ago because of his support. Hayden heard it, and there was a slight emotional change on his face, but it was only a moment. Then, he smiled similarly. Why, at that time, didn't you just see Lieutenant General Crane's shadow, and you were scared and ran away? His words contained considerable sarcasm. At this moment when the two were deadlocked, the residents of Hongang below began to talk. After all, such a battle that can be called a New World level unexpectedly appeared on this red harbor. The Doflamingo in the sky, because the news about that guy in the newspaper has been on the front page recently, but the recent limelights, they know Doflamingo. However, the swordsman who was fighting with him now, even though the man showed his face, the residents of Hongang still didn't have any information in their minds. Moreover, that mysterious swordsman, unexpectedly, and that Doflamingo, the pirate who had just joined the Chihuahai recently, got a tie.
The ordinary people on Hongang were all in shock.
At the same time, for the two people who were deadlocked in the sky, Doflamingo also understood that it was useless and meaningless to talk to this kid. Although, after he sent the heavenly gold to Hongang, it was completely irrelevant to him. However, as the first to join Chihuahai, he decided to give his gift to the group of people in the world government.
Thinking of this, Doflamingo jerked forward, pushing away Hayden's blade.
Immediately afterwards, advertisement. From the palm of his upper right hand, dozens of silk threads were suddenly ejected, intertwined in an instant, and then a thick overstrike whip was formed instantly. The whip is composed of dozens of silk threads that cut stones as easy as cutting a cake. The power of the whip can directly destroy a building with just one blow. Even the Navy's warships will be destroyed with just one blow to this attack. However, Doflamingo is not finished by this alone. He slammed the whip in the direction of Hayden. The speed of the whip was suddenly blessed to a terrifying situation. The air was rubbed out of flames by the extremely fast whip and attached to the overstrike twist whip. But, the current Hayden didn't have any dodge. Instead, he raised his knife to meet the incoming terrorist attack directly. The pitch-black blade immediately slashed on the whip with a burning effect, and there was a bang, and the violent impact of each other immediately sounded.
The overstrike whip that was thrown out was not cut off by Hayden's sword. However, the overstrike twist whip only countered Hayden's sword for about 1 second. The next second, the twist whip immediately sent the huge force from the blade, and flew out suddenly, like a sudden break. The same as the spring. At the same time, this backlash immediately followed the silk thread and passed to Doflamingo's body, and even his body was shaken in the air by this rebounding force. This moment is a good opportunity for Hayden. He also seized the opportunity immediately.
Hayden was not surprised, and then raised the pitch-black blade of the blade and waved a cross-shaped chopping wave towards Doflamingo's unstable body at the moment. The pressure of the silver-white sword instantly pierced the air obstructing it, making a loud roar all the way, and came to Doflamingo's face. However, at this moment, he has no time to make any remedial opportunities, and can no longer flash, so he can only take this powerful slash. Chapter 260. That's it. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Boom. Once again, more silk threads than overstrike twisted whip threads burst out from above Doflamingo's left hand. A silk defensive wall with a spider web structure instantly blocked Doflamingo's face. However, the situation with the previous overstrike winch is almost the same. The cobweb wall can only protect the silk thread from being cut by Hayden's chopping wave, and it only has a defense effect for 1 second. The next second later, under the powerful chopping of Hayden, Doflamingo's body was immediately knocked out. It seemed that his defensive tactics had no effect. Doflamingo's body was directly and severely smashed into the red earth continent behind him. Red rubble and billowing smoke suddenly appeared on the rock walls of the red earth continent, temporarily obscuring the specific situation of Doflamingo.
However, Hayden did not stop thinking about continuing to attack.
He will not miss such a good opportunity given to him by Doflamingo. Since that guy didn't choose to stay in Hong Kong honestly and let the ordinary people take him hostage, it would be in his heart to confront him directly now. Hayden's eyes focused on the red earth continent ahead, where smoke and dust appeared. Afterwards, several terrifying chopping waves burst out from the black blade of the white snow on the sleeves. It cut through the air at extreme speed, and made a loud noise that resounded through Hong Kong. In the range of his sight at the moment, where the smoke and dust appeared on the rock wall of the red earth continent, he slashed over with a slash. Anyway, as long as Doflamingo was still in the smoke, there was always a slash that could hit him. Boom. 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 The flying slash plunged into the smoke on the rock wall, rolling up the smoke and creating a cyclone, revealing a slight corner behind the smoke.
Suddenly, advertisement with a bang. The sound of the steel cable breaking and the metal shaking suddenly sounded.
Then in Hayden's eyes, on the red soil continental rock wall in front, the steel cable used to hang the bubble pod suddenly slammed out of the smoke.
The tight cable of the pod was suddenly cut off by a slash. The moment it slackened, it bounced high and shot directly onto the red earth continent.
Oh, there was an expression of accidentally doing bad things on Hayden's face, but he didn't know if he was really sorry in his heart.
Same time. The sudden bounce of the cable also dissipated and swept the smoke rising from the vicinity of the rock wall in one breath, revealing the appearance of being bombarded by several slashes. Huge fragments of red rock continued to fall off the rock wall, falling towards the Hongkong below. Afterwards, I saw that the place where Doflamingo smashed into the red soil continent happened to be the place with the world government pattern. At this moment, I saw that the pattern of the world government had lost its original shape.
And Doflamingo him now. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. His entire body was embedded into the rock wall, smashing a human-shaped depression. He stretched his left hand in front of him and released the spider web wall, barely blocking the slash that hit him just now. However, the impact and shock of Hayden's slash just now did not give Doflamingo a good feeling. When Doflamingo played against him just now, he still had a hint of playfulness, and he didn't take the kid who survived by chance a few years ago seriously. But now that he was bombarded by a series of slashes, the inconsequential mood in his heart has been completely beaten. Or it can be said that he was beaten up instantly at this time because he didn't do a good job of meeting such a powerful offensive.
The smoke cleared. Doflamingo, who came back to his senses, veins suddenly popped up on his forehead.
The little devil who was lucky enough to survive his hands a few years ago, now he can still beat him down for a while. Advertisement. After a while, he switched from an angry expression to another state instantly, making it difficult to see what he was thinking. Humish. Doflamingo uttered his iconic laughter. The laughter became louder and louder, and the spread of the laughter became wider and wider. Not only did the people on the Red Harbor below hear the laughter, but also in the distant air. Hayden also heard this laughter. Was this guy beaten stupid? Hayden thought of strangeness, and couldn't help frowning slightly. That's interesting. That's interesting. Doflamingo's inexplicable words popped out, and he couldn't help showing his emotions. And Hayden, who was strange for a second, fixed his eyes on Doflamingo's direction. Since that guy hasn't been killed yet, he has nothing to hesitate. Hayden raised the knife again. Another powerful slash burst out from the knife, and flew in the direction of Doflamingo.
At this time, staring at the slash that struck again, Doflamingo, at this moment, drew his stuck body from the rock wall. The cobweb wall that disappeared in front of the left hand also reappeared. Only this time, it was faster, larger, and more defensive. The moment Hayden's slash hit the spider web wall, it was immediately cancelled out. However,
Doflamingo released the cobweb wall as a shield and rushed forward, but he was not affected by the slash at all. He used the cobweb wall to resist Hayden's slash, and rushed towards Hayden at high speed.
Next second, the distance between the two of them instantly narrowed to a gap of less than 1 meter.
Advertisement. Foot shaved thread. Doflamingo's right toe suddenly shot out 8 threads as sharp as a blade. At the same time, he also swept his legs towards Hayden's head. Boom. A very crisp cross knock exploded. Hayden's blade collided with Doflamingo's foot-shaved line, and immediately burst out a large number of spark stars, making a sizzling noise. But, although the attack was blocked, Doflamingo's offensive has not yet ended. Drop the rogue line. He gave a violent shout, and turned his arm toward Hayden's body with a violent wave from top to bottom. At the same time, 5 fingers made 5 silk threads. Then he descended at high speed from the direction of Hayden's head, trying to penetrate his entire body directly.
The expression on Hayden's face did not change, even his eyelids did not move. He turned sideways slightly, and then based on what he had seen and heard about the domineering and predicting part of the hit, he used the armed domineering to harden and cover it. Next second, the straight rogue line fell on the surface of Hayden's body, on the hardened surface of the high-strength armed color. After that, it was like touching some slippery surface. Although sparks were ignited, it took less than a second, and immediately lost the effect of the original penetration attack and moved away. That's it. Hayden looked at Doflamingo in front of him, and said with disappointment in his tone. At this moment, Shu Baishui's blade was still on Doflamingo's shaving line, and the two were in a stage of inconsistency.
Chapter 261 Devil Fruit Awakens. Previous chapter. Advertisement. Boy. Doflamingo leaked these 2 words between his clenched teeth. At this moment, he was bearing the strong force passed from Hayden's knife on his leg, and the blue veins on his forehead became more prominent. Hayden chuckled and did not continue to speak. He didn't come here to play with the guy in front of him, and time is not on his side now. The black blade of Shu Baishui still touched Doflamingo's foot-shave line, but he began to control the blade, slowly pressing Doflamingo's leg down. Of course, a force burst out from Doflamingo's legs, trying to resist Hayden's move. However, he had fallen into a disadvantage at the beginning, and if he wanted to fight back, there was no chance of salvation. Just at the moment when Hayden slowly shaved Doflamingo's foot and pressed it down. Suddenly, Hayden stomped on the air under his feet abruptly, his body steadily vacated, and then he twisted his waist in the air, gathering all the strength of his whole body, and immediately concentrated on the right leg swayed towards Doflamingo, and he was also armed instantly covered the entire right leg. There was a boom. After the loud noise, Doflamingo, who was too late to make any movements, could only slightly move his head away from the attacked root, and his left arm shoulder received a heavy blow from Hayden's leg sweeping frontally. Doflamingo's left arm and left side suddenly sank as if without bones. At this moment when time seemed to be slowed down, it showed a wave effect like being crushed by a hydraulic press. As for Hayden's heavy blow, it was enough to knock a warship down. The strength contained in his leg can be imagined. Advertisement. Doflamingo was kicked out by this attack in an instant. However, Hayden, who kicked Doflamingo out, did not stop. He followed the direction where Doflamingo flew out. Hayden's figure suddenly came in front of Doflamingo, far faster than Doflamingo was knocked into the air, and even faster than Doflamingo could react. When Doflamingo has no time to escape, Hayden held the hilt of Su Shirayuki's knife with both hands, as if he was swinging a baseball bat, and suddenly hit Doflamingo, who seemed to have become a baseball at this moment. Boom. With another loud noise, Hayden hit a perfect home run. Doflamingo's body was knocked out again, and the same as last time, the whole person is like an unresistible doll, flying in the direction of the Red Earth continent. From the perspective of the residents of Honggang below, even they can now understand the reality in front of them. Doflamingo, who was newly promoted to Chiwahai, was completely at a disadvantage, and was hit by the mysterious swordsman who did not know where he emerged. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zik. Doflamingo, who was flying upside down, smashed into the red soil continental rock wall that had been cracked on its surface. His body immediately blasted a large pit, exploding on the rock wall. Smoke rose again, filling the area near his current location. The difference is, this time Doflamingo understood. The current strength of the kid a few years ago obviously cannot be judged by the situation at the time, nor can it be easily solved by some simple means. Spit. Advertisement. He vomited a pool of blood mixed with visceral residues from his mouth, and then created silk threads in his body to repair his injuries. At this time, Hayden did not launch another slash for the first time. After the smoke gradually dissipated, he began to squint his eyes and focus on the rock wall of the Red Earth continent, trying to find out where Doflamingo was and how he was doing. At first glance, Doflamingo still had a breath. Sure enough, it was not solved by the attack just now. At this time, half of Doflamingo protruded from the rock face, holding on to the rock with his feet, and standing on the rock face. He already showed his tired face and raised a wicked smile. Boy, you don't know that there is another kind of power in the sea. He shouted loudly in Hayden's direction, speaking of words that ordinary people could not understand its true meaning, and his tone was full of a certain sense of superiority. Okay. Hayden frowned slightly. Another power. He was a little strange. Then, before he could think for a few more seconds, he looked into Doflamingo's line of sight and found a strange anomaly. At this moment, beside Doflamingo, the rock wall that was supposed to be red began to gradually turn white, as if it had been impregnated by something all of a sudden. In less than 2 or 3 seconds, the white area suddenly expanded to the point where the area was a bit exaggerated, and all the red Earth continents were stained with a layer of white within the line of sight that Hayden could see from the front. This situation is like the red Earth continent speeding up the moldy process in just 10 seconds, and growing white silk threads. Awakened. Hayden murmured as he stared at the sight of the red Earth continent in front of him. He immediately understood what Doflamingo had done to the red Earth continent. Advertisement. After the devil fruit develops to a certain extent, the fruit's ability will have a qualitative leap, and this leap is generally called awakening. In the case of the superhuman system, after awakening, one's own abilities can affect things other than one's own. Doflamingo turned all the red Earth continent around him into his silk thread, turning into a silk thread that was several times or even dozens of times more than the silk thread he could produce. Power, attack speed, and defensive abilities, all have been fully improved after awakening. It can be said that the current Doflamingo can lift the hammer from the previous one. Boy, see the power you can't understand. Doflamingo's aura at this moment was completely as if he had changed his personality. He had been energetic from the situation where Hayden hadn't been hammered from just now. Hayden has nothing to say. Is this the only trick left for you now? He shrugged and said lightly, revealing what he didn't care about. Even if he saw the entire red Earth continent now, he was allowed to control Doflamingo. Another meaning is that if you use the last resort now, it will be too boring. In other words, Hayden didn't think it would be a threat to Doflamingo, who had already learned the fruit awakening ability at this time. But the Hong Kong below, at this time, because the fighting became more and more intense, the noise on the Hong Kong was getting louder and louder. For this level of battle, the people on the port had no room to resist, so there was only a spontaneous panic sound. Hayden thought for a while. If you continue to fight, not only will the time be bad, but the Hong Kong below is probably going to be unable to hold it. He moved his gaze to Doflamingo, and saw that he also pointed his gaze in the direction of Hayden at the same time, and his gaze collided. The two men's domineering once again stirred up thunder. Chapter 262 Unbelievable. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Face the situation at this time. Obviously, he couldn't use ordinary slashes to deal with Doflamingo after the devil fruit ability was awakened. Ling Wu, Shu Baishui. Hayden's left hand slowly brushed across the blade. The ordinary white snow on the sleeves immediately followed the hand, and changed a little bit into a completely different appearance. The whole body was pure white, and a pure white ribbon suddenly appeared at the end of the handle. A chill visible to the naked eye suddenly emerged from the pure white knife. Hayden is no stranger to Shu Baishui's initial explanation, and Doflamingo has also been very impressed with this thing. What, kid, don't you plan to pull out another knife? Doflamingo said kindly to Hayden, and huge, silvery white silk threads like sea waves surrounded him. Oh, Hayden glanced at the unplugged Chiban Sakura on his waist. You say this, I can't deal with you with all my strength. He replied quickly, casually, as if answering an obvious problem. Hummish. Doflamingo smiled immediately after hearing the answer. Let this kid go. After he has tasted the power after awakening, he will understand that he was reminding him just now. Subsequently, the two facing each other did not speak again. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent, like the last second of silence before the storm. Suddenly, advertisement. Without warning, huge waves and white lines. Doflamingo yelled violently and slammed his hands forward. Then, the countless silver white silk threads around him were immediately assembled into dozens of aggregates with a diameter of about 3 to 4 meters, like he had suddenly grown dozens of huge tentacles, and then moved from the red earth continent towards shot in the direction of Hayden. Carrying Shiji Baishui's sleeve, Hayden faced the silk thread attack like a huge wave. He didn't panic at all, not even a drop of sweat came out. Ha ha. His figure suddenly disappeared into the air a second ago. Then two huge, raging attacks crossed through where Hayden was supposed to be. Hayden's figure flickered in the air, jumping from one place to another, evading the chase of the white line of the wild waves, and disappeared before the white line of the wild waves arrived. Under the interlacing of dozens of thick silk threads, he passed through every gap and seized every opportunity. He was narrowing the distance with Doflamingo, and every jump made him closer. Less than a minute, Hayden danced between the silk threads, avoided countless attacks on him, and narrowed the distance with Doflamingo. Ha! Hayden slammed a flying slash at Doflamingo. The sword aura with the icy breath flew away at an extremely fast speed, freezing the moisture in the air where it passed, leaving behind ice crystals all the way. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. The temperature around the two of them suddenly dropped a few degrees because of the cold. Shield white line. Doflamingo watched the attack, and he crossed his hands in front of him. Immediately, tens of thousands of silver white silk threads sprayed out on the left and right sides of his body, forming two huge tentacles, immediately blocking the space in front of him. Boom! The ice-cold sword aura immediately blasted on the white line of the shield. In less than 2 seconds, the defensive shield composed of tens of thousands of silk threads was immediately frozen by the cold air, and the flowing posture was stiff in the air. Next moment. Advertisement. Hayden, who attacked Doflamingo, didn't stop flashing. The huge broken ice splashed into the sky, and he suddenly broke the silk ice block in front of him. He and Doflamingo took a step closer again. At this moment, the reflection in Hayden's pupils showed up, and Doflamingo, who showed an expression of disbelief on the rock wall of the red earth continent, seemed to feel a real fear for Hayden at this moment. However, Hayden didn't have any emotions rising. Doflamingo's heart was confused. Blue veins burst on his forehead and his teeth clenched together. He didn't believe his next move, and this kid could escape. 1,000 arrows piercing heart feather strike line. He roared. His two arms suddenly seemed to be waving wings, and the countless silk threads flowing around him immediately responded. Tens of thousands of threads, even hundreds of thousands, millions of threads, burst out from the silk thread rock wall with a whistling sound.
And on the tip of each tiny thread, he was wrapped in a purple-black armed color domineering.
Countless silk threads envelop all angles around Hayden. Up, down, left, and right. I want to attack him without any dead ends, and pierce his heart with 1,000 arrows. But, facing such a crisis, Hayden didn't even turn his head, his eyes were always fixed in front of him, and perhaps only Doflamingo, who was less than 5 or 6 meters away, remained.
Time seems to slow down at this moment. The killing intent in Doflamingo's eyes and body was so strong that he could even smell it. However, Hayden's expression was still as leisurely as he was walking on the street, and he didn't seem to think there was anything to pay attention to in the surrounding situation. Next moment, the time suddenly returned to the normal flow rate. Advertisement bang. Millions of silk threads were wrapped around Hayden, and they all passed through Hayden's body, destroying him directly, and it seemed that he was not prepared to leave any residue.
Hummish. Doflamingo looked at the established facts in front of him, watching the sight of this little devil being annihilated by his silk thread without any chance to dodge. He couldn't help laughing happily and excitedly.
Boy! Now you know the vastness of the sea. He made a victorious declaration, just as he defeated every opponent who tried to provoke him. The others are no different, and this kid is no different either. Hume. Doflamingo's laughter resounded throughout Hong Kong, but, hey, did you not see clearly just now? The voice of the dead Hayden suddenly rang in Doflamingo's ear. What? Doflamingo was shocked, and immediately turned his gaze to the source of the sound, which was to his left. Then I saw. Just now, it was clearly in his eyes that Hayden, who was swallowed by his own silk thread, appeared in front of him again at this moment. Doflamingo glanced at him. There were no scars on this kid's body, not even a trace of scratches. It was the clothes on this kid, it seemed that there was a missing piece. Then, just at this moment when Doflamingo was too shocked, Hayden, who was already close, waved Shirayuki's sleeve toward Doflamingo's defenseless body. Doflamingo's eyes widened in surprise, and there was a look of horror in his pupils.
He wanted to control his own silk thread to block the attack path between the electric light flint that was almost in the prohibited state at this time. Similarly, his silk thread was almost slow, and he couldn't feel the speed of the action.
Chapter 263 Fury Previous Chapter Next Chapter Advertisement. The instinct in Doflamingo's body. He immediately covered the front of his body with a layer of super high-strength armed domineering, hardening the front and strengthening his defense capabilities. At the same time, after a moment when Doflamingo's body was covered with armed color, Hayden was just 2 or 3 meters away from him. He carried the blade of Shirayuki's sleeve, and raised a frozen sword air from bottom to top, in the form of an arc. When he felt the cold air, he would feel the chill of brain. Wherever he went, the silk thread rock wall affected by Doflamingo's awakening suddenly froze at this moment. Frozen sword chi suddenly blasted towards Doflamingo's chest. Next moment, the sword aura seemed to bombard Doflamingo's front, bombarding his body after the hardened armor color. Immediately, this cold air was on him, exploding like a big explosion, and the huge air conditioning instantly enveloped his whole body. The pure white and thick air conditioning then drifted away, revealing a human-shaped ice sculpture embedded on the rock wall. The eyes, nose, mouth, and every detail of the body are all lifelike, as if they were natural. Doflamingo didn't have time to dodge, and he was turned into a human-shaped ice sculpture. The piercing cold air began to invade his armed armor, freezing layer by layer, and then intruded into the real flesh under his armed color, and penetrated into Doflamingo's interior. At this moment, Doflamingo, who was sealed by the ice sculpture, still has a trace of consciousness in his brain. The horror in his heart just now for this little devil has now quietly disappeared, leaving only the anger towards himself, the endless anger about himself being beaten by a little devil. Advertisement driven by such a heartfelt, most real excitement. Doflamingo didn't wait for a few seconds. The trapped body suddenly exerted strength, and after a part of the ice was threaded, he broke out of the ice. After breaking free, he immediately began to create countless silk threads in his body, repairing the internal injuries, and dispelling the invading cold. Then, for a while, he used his ability to the limit. All the silk threads he can control when the devil fruit is awakened are all shot out from the top of the rock wall that has been transformed into silk threads, and gather into countless strands of huge silver tentacles. And on each of the tentacles, a purple-black armed color domineering was wrapped around, making the already powerful and terrifying tentacles even more frightening. At this moment, the Red Earth continent near Hong Kong can no longer be called the Red Earth continent. In this place now, it is as if countless monster tentacles have grown from the top of the rock wall, dancing and swirling in the air. Boy! Doflamingo yelled, with a hideous face and murderous intent to rise up. Even if Hayden was some distance away, he could smell the smell. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Obviously, this guy has been completely irritated. Hayden watched. Doflamingo thought after the countless interlaced tentacles, but the current state of this guy, in his eyes, looked like an incompetent rage. The next moment, suddenly, Doflamingo launched a swift offensive towards Hayden. There were countless tentacles in the whole body, and suddenly, Chi launched into the air where Hayden was. Above, below, on the left, on the right, and even below from the direction of Hong Kong, some of the tentacles rushed towards Hayden's body. The agility of these tentacles is not as if they are all controlled by one person. Advertisement: each tentacle seems to have its own consciousness, and between the tentacle and the tentacle, there is only a gap about the width of a person.
Although there is a gap of a person's width, in such a range, such a number, and such a degree, under the astonishing tentacles attack of the sea and huge waves, it can almost be equal to no gap.
If you zoom out the current scene, the tentacles have blocked the entire sky near Hong Kong and obscured the sky of Hong Kong. Simultaneously, the travel speed of these tentacles also increased rapidly with the time of 1 second, which was more than twice as fast as when Doflamingo's huge white line was still a trick. However, although this move is amazing, Hayden relied on skillful instant steps, flashing back and forth among countless interlaced tentacles, avoiding every tentacles that attacked him and passing by them. A gorgeous space dance was immediately staged in the sky of Hong Kong. However, the tentacles eventually created some bruises for Hayden, but there was nothing serious about them. Boom. 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 The huge flexible tentacles swam back and forth in the air, and the speed of travel caused the air to rub against the air, which made a weird roar. At this time, the same as before, Hayden, who dodged between the huge tentacles, was jumping and flickering, gradually getting closer and closer to Doflamingo's position. If he wanted to kill Doflamingo, who was in this state, he had to attack him in close quarters, this way. At this time, Hayden and Doflamingo, who was manipulating the tentacles on the rock wall, narrowed the distance to the last 20 meters. How long is the distance of 20 meters? One floor is about 3 meters high, so it is 6 or 7 floors, and then you can lay it flat to see the distance. Advertisement for Doflamingo and Hayden, who are obviously not ordinary people. It only takes about a second for a distance of 20 meters.
The sight of the two suddenly collided. Now, Doflamingo didn't need him either, and he controlled all the tentacles to attack Hayden from all directions. And Hayden didn't need it either, and then used the instant step between the tentacles to hide and hide.
At this moment, the huge tentacles all gathered in front of Doflamingo and rushed in the direction of Hayden. Hayden began to strike in a straight line and straight in the direction of Doflamingo. Bang bang bang. He carried his sleeve baishui, and cut off all the tentacles that hit him in front of him, cut one after another.
Moment. All of the tentacles that Doflamingo can control are cut off by Hayden, and there are still parts that cannot be recovered for a while, and they have no attack ability for the time being. Without obstruction ahead, Hayden's figure suddenly appeared, 2 or 3 meters in front of Doflamingo. In Doflamingo's perception, this unsuspecting moment seemed to have been slowed down countless times. He could clearly see what the kid was doing in front of him. Hayden held the knife, his eyes focused on Doflamingo. Xiao Xiao's cold air. As the words in his mouth flowed out, Shu Baishui's knife immediately burst out with a strong chill, just like the huge flames erupting from a rocket ejector, but in Hayden's situation, it broke out. It's the biting air conditioning. One sword stream iceberg. Chapter 264 16 Holy Bullets.
Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement at once. A very large arc-shaped sword energy, wrapped in a majestic cold air, bombarded Doflamingo's chest frontally. In an instant, the huge impact and the icy breath immediately gave Doflamingo a heavy blow he had never received in his entire life, vomiting blood. However, the sword energy did not dissipate immediately after touching Doflamingo's body. Instead, it took his body and blasted straight into the rock wall of the Red Earth continent. A scary knife mark appeared afterwards, above the Red Earth continent. Then I saw that due to the impact of the heavy blow, Doflamingo's extremely large silk thread area suddenly shrank several times and returned to his side. Doflamingo, who was bombarded inside the rock wall, immediately resumed his work and his clear consciousness after his brain suddenly stopped for a second. He was covered in blood, but he was frosted for a moment by the air conditioner. The clothes all over his body had long been torn, and his body couldn't support such a high-intensity attack, showing obvious fatigue. But Doflamingo's consciousness has never been so clear before, and a murder intent that is stronger than he remembered when he was a child rises in his heart. He has a hideous face and breathes from his nostrils. Suddenly, he opened his hands and separated his 5 fingers, forming a claw shape. Immediately, the narrowed silk threads around him gathered into 16 silk threads in one breath. At the same time, Hayden looked at Doflamingo's actions at the moment, and he also realized that this should be Doflamingo's last trick. He held the hilt of Shishui's sword in both hands, calmly pouring the spiritual pressure of his whole body onto the blade at this moment. With the tip of the knife facing down, he lowered his posture. Advertisement: the eyes of the two were locked tightly on each other's body. Doflamingo's killing intent seemed to shoot from his body, directly into Hayden's eye sockets. 16 sacred bullets. He roared, the armed color domineering instantly wrapped the whole body of the 16 threads, turning all the silver-white silk threads into purple-black sharp spikes. Final dance. The blade of the sleeve Baishui in Hayden's hand suddenly extended, eventually turning into a Zhanpai sword with a length of almost 3 meters. God kills. White Crescent. The two shouted the final move in unison.
16 rounds wrapped around the thread of ultra-high-strength armed color domineering, and shot in the direction of Hayden. The speed of its attack has reached a very terrifying level, cutting through the air, rubbing the air, and even the whole world. There was a harsh screaming sound, like the roar of some terrible monster.
And as Hayden's words fell, a half-moon shape, like a bright crescent-like arc, rushed toward 16 sacred bullets at the same time. For an instant. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Two surprisingly powerful attacks collided. The next moment, a strong momentum swept away in all directions around the impact point.
The sea was blown out of rolling waves, and the windows of all the houses on Honggang below were all broken and exploded at this moment, alarming a panic on Honggang.
The two attacks collided and hit the point of impact. Suddenly, it aroused bursts of red and black thunder, making a shrill sound, which spread to all the nearby places. However, at this moment, as if the world is about to collapse, the residents of Honggang, in panic, still have a trace of curiosity that is not afraid of death. All of them poked their heads out of the broken window and looked at the sky above the Red Harbor at this time.
Advertisement. Everyone understands that now is the final critical moment. They don't want to miss this scene that they may never see again in their lives, even if it is likely to kill them. This is the involuntary awe and curiosity that mankind has involuntarily produced for the mighty power that transcends oneself, beyond oneself. Everyone's eyes were staring at the place where the thunder exploded in the sky. But the gust of wind made them even a little bit unable to open their eyes. They could only squint their eyes, block their hands in front of them, and then look at the sky from the gap between them.
After a while, the two attacks that did not yield to each other and stalemate in the air seemed to be about to separate their results. In the eyes of all the residents of Honggang, the attack from Doflamingo's direction was being pushed back step by the crescent-shaped slash. As long as a normal person looks at this situation, he immediately knows that Doflamingo is losing a little bit. The muscles of Doflamingo's whole body were tightened into a whole piece, and he used all the strength of his whole body together. However, at this moment, he was not attacking Hayden, but using all his strength to resist Hayden's attack. However, the sword aura that Hayden swayed was not affected by Doflamingo's power again, and he did not retreat at all. Instead, he continued to press the silk thread toward Doflamingo's direction. Next moment, the frozen sword chi was the same, and a second wave of power broke out. In a crash, because the two attacks fought against each other, a gust of wind that was stronger than the previous impact immediately spread towards the surroundings, rolling up all the tiny objects, broken ice, broken rocks, and sand. The attack shook the space, and the loud boom echoed far away. The sky and the earth are eclipsed at this moment. After a while, advertisement: the impact of the collision gradually dissipated. The sky in Honggang returned to calm, and the waves near the sea gradually calmed down. Only a cloud of cold white mist remained in the air, drifting slowly. All ordinary people in Honggang felt that the turbulence in the sky had disappeared, and realized that the battle was probably completely over. The courageous and curious people immediately walked out of their homes, regardless of what mess their homes had become. They just want to know who wins and who loses in this earth-shattering battle. Is it Doflamingo that newly promoted Chihuahai? Or the mysterious swordsman with a hat? Everyone had no clue, and then moved their gazes into the air. I saw that mysterious swordsman was standing steadily above the sky, and his robe was slowly fluttering under the breeze. There is no blood, no wounds, and the light in the eyes remains undiminished. Everyone realized in an instant that Doflamingo had lost. Simultaneously, with a boom, a sound rang in a part of Hong Kong, and then smoke and dust higher than the house rose. The smoke and dust quickly dispersed, revealing the scene in the smoke and dust. In the eyes of ordinary people close to this place, they suddenly saw that Doflamingo was lying in the ruins. The front of his body, extending from his left shoulder to his right waist, has a long scar of scary knife. The blood seemed to be frozen on the surface of the wound, and it did not flow out a large amount of snow water as normal. Even though his body was totally unrecognizable at this time, everyone could still distinguish clearly from the part of the remaining clothes on his body. Chapter 265 Doflamingo, Die previous chapter next chapter. Advertisement. Moreover, there is no one else here. Who else could it be if it wasn't that Doflamingo? Everyone who saw this scene completely confirmed in their hearts this fact that shocked all of them. Doflamingo was defeated, and the defeat was very thorough. They subconsciously looked at Hayden standing in the sky above their heads.
That mysterious swordsman actually treated Doflamingo like a newly debuted pirate, in a state of crushing him all the time.
They don't know what to think about in their hearts. At this time, in order to confirm Doflamingo's situation, Hayden slowly descended towards the Red Harbor below. As Hayden approached, the people below clearly saw the situation on the mysterious swordsman. Except for some broken clothes on his body and some scratches on his body, he did not seem to have received any severe attacks. And those who understood the level of this battle and the winner was only scratched, and the meaning of it, their hearts were once again shocked. This time it seemed to be a shock from the depths of the soul. After such a battle, the winning side was only bruised. What does this mean? This means that this guy didn't use his full strength at all, but in such a situation, he could still solve Zhanpakudao flamenco. They also knew the meaning of the word, 7 Wuhai. One of the three major forces in the Great Sea. Even a lieutenant admiral of the Navy headquarters cannot easily solve the object, and even some lieutenants cannot solve a QUC. In other words, the strength of this mysterious swordsman surpassed at least the lieutenant admiral of the Navy headquarters, and surpassed the lieutenant general of the Navy headquarters. Advertisement. Everyone dared not think about it. Everyone could only stare wide at the moment, staring blankly at the scene in front of them, watching the scene in front of them. However, just as Hayden, who fell on the Red Harbor, slowly walked towards the ruins of Doflamingo. Although he received a heavy blow that killed him almost instantly, it didn't take long for Doflamingo to recover his consciousness. Feeling the severe pain in his body, as if all the muscles in his body had been smashed, Doflamingo, who was holding back the pain, secretly began to quickly use the silk thread in his body to repair the inner injury. But he was lying on the ruins. His body did not move when he woke up, only 10 fingers trembling slightly. The corners of his mouth raised an arc that was not easily noticeable. The fingers trembled. 10 almost transparent silk threads, undetected by Hayden's eyes, immediately rushed straight from his fingers to the sky, and then quickly fell on the ordinary people around. Parasitic line, he said faintly, with a voice that was just right for Hayden to hear. A wicked smile appeared on his face. What are you doing? Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Stop it now. I'm not doing this. My body can't move. Suddenly, a horrified voice sounded around, and an unknown aura instantly enveloped this area. Hayden stopped and looked around. The ordinary people around were all at this moment, posing as if they were being manipulated, with their limbs standing in an extremely strange posture. Little devil, if you take one step closer, the people around you will die. Doflamingo's voice suddenly reached his ears, his tone full of confidence. Advertisement. After listening, Hayden understood the situation at a glance. Doflamingo used his thread to control the ordinary people around him, and wanted to take ordinary people as hostages to threaten him. Prolonging time should be one of his thoughts. Hayden quickly thought of the general situation in his heart. However, he did not panic. He looked at the surrounding situation again. The ordinary people who were manipulated were still a little away from his current direction. However, Hayden must kill Doflamingo, this guy, today, not just because of his previous hatred with this guy. Do you think it's your speed or mine? Hayden spoke lightly and said towards Doflamingo. After listening, Doflamingo didn't think of what he was talking about at the first time, but he understood it the second time, and then he immediately laughed, and even started to laugh,
even if it was caused by the act of laughter. Pain in his whole body. As long as he moved his fingers, everyone around him would be killed immediately. Although your kid's speed is not as fast as I can, you didn't kill me fast enough before I moved my fingers, right?
So naive, kid. You guy is the same as us, Doflamingo said loudly towards Hayden.
The implication is that Hayden, like them, doesn't care about the lives of these ordinary people, as long as things can be done.
His words echoed above the ruins. It's monotonous, but it makes people who are controlled around feel scared. This guy won't let Doflamingo kill them. The controlled person couldn't help thinking in his heart, watching Hayden's back. Suddenly heard this. Hayden's eyes flickered, and he looked into Doflamingo's eyes, but a strange pity was revealed, but he could not see the sun tomorrow. And this sympathetic look was like the match that lit a gunpowder barrel. Advertisement suddenly, an unknown feeling came out of Doflamingo's heart, and at the same time an endless fire ignited. Are you fellow sympathizing with me? His words roared. The voice fell. He doesn't care about anything, he intends to kill all the people around him directly, but Hayden did not answer his question. No, I am faster. His voice suddenly sounded strangely behind Doflamingo at this moment, and at the same time, there was a click, like the sound of retracting a knife into its sheath. Then, the people around them who were controlled by the silk threads suddenly felt that the feeling in their bodies disappeared. However, the scene they saw next appeared in their minds for a long time, and they couldn't get rid of it for a long time. Wow! On Doflamingo's body, a lot of blood spurted out of fear. No, it should be that Doflamingo has only the lower part of the body, splashing a lot of blood, splashing in the air. And all of this happened without Doflamingo not realizing it. The expression on his face remained the ferocious expression that was determined to kill everyone around him at that moment. Hayden, who had already taken his sword, slowly turned and looked at the ordinary people behind him at the moment. An idea came to him. Hyuan calendar 1514, the 14th year after the opening of the Great Pirate Era. Don Quixote Doflamingo, who was originally a Tinlongren and now one of the pirates of the Seven Martial Seas, was killed by a mysterious swordsman in the second half of the Great Route, the Red Harbor of the New World.
Chapter 266 Proclaim the World. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. As the gunpowder smoke quickly dissipated,
the tense atmosphere on Honggang finally calmed down.
The residents on Honggang also all walked out of their homes and came to the place where the last smoke and dust had risen before, where Doflamingo fell.
However, at this time, Hayden did not leave for the first time. The time now is right for him to do the next thing. The residents of Honggang, with Hayden as the center, stand around in a circle. Hayden, standing next to Doflamingo's fall, at the top of the ruins, looked down at the residents of the nearby Honggang. Most of their faces have a surprised face, and everyone's expressions are basically the same. Hayden watched the crowd gather, and he didn't wait any longer. Taking advantage of this excellent opportunity, I have spoken out what I have said to the world government and the world. Listen. My name is Hayden. You may have heard of this name before and have seen my photos, but these are not important. I am here today, just to tell you, tell the world government, tell all people living in this vast sea, today, I will organize a team to overthrow the world government. Today is my first step to overthrow the world government. With Hayden's words here, he paused for a while, watching the faces of the people around him showing more shocked expressions. He went on. Now, pass this news out. Pass it to the world government. Pass it to everyone in the world. Pass it to this sea.
A passionate speech fell. Hayden didn't have the slightest nostalgia, and his figure disappeared on top of the ruins in everybody's eyes.
Just now, what was that guy talking about? That guy's name. Hayden. Advertisement. Why is that name a bit familiar? The people who didn't react for a while, immediately looked at me, and I looked at you.
What? Suddenly a shout exploded among them. Isn't that guy who killed 2 dragon people 3 years ago?
This shout was like thunder, and it also exploded in everyone's hearts. No one will forget what happened that day 3 years ago, it's just time that buried it in everyone's hearts.
The sudden death of the 2 heavenly dragons at that time caused the sea to boil for a while. But then I heard that the world government has never caught the navy that killed the Denon.
This guy has appeared again now. There was an uproar among the crowd on Honggang. This incident was more shocking than the death of Doflamingo just now, and it shocked all of them, and it also made them feel terrified. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. What this guy said to them just now, if that guy is serious.
Then the Tianlong people dared to kill him, and he could survive the pursuit of the world government and navy for 3 years.
What does this guy want to do? Everyone recovered from their horror, and then looked around, trying to find Hayden's figure. However, Hayden has now arrived in an instant, on the ship loaded with heavenly gold. On the deck, Hayden then scanned the entire ship with his knowledge. The crew on this ship before basically boarded the Red Harbor, and there were not a few people left on the ship.
He noticed a few people appearing in different places on the ship, but they were all in a coma. It seemed that they had been subjected to an imposing collision at close range and couldn't support it.
Advertisement at the same time, Hayden also scanned a cabin with an unusually large internal space. You don't need to think about it anymore, that place is definitely the place where the sky is placed.
Hayden hurriedly walked to the cabin and entered the interior. He quickly came to the cabin that he was aware of. And what appeared in front of him was definitely a double opening door made of pure gold, indicating that it must be what he thought it was inside. He pushed away. Suddenly, there seemed to be a very dazzling light inside, and it hit Hayden's face all at once.
Hayden couldn't help holding his hands in front of him, blocking the irritating light. Squinting, he looked at the world behind the door from the gap. I saw that this unusually huge cabin was filled with treasures shining brightly. Gems, crowns, gold coins, wine glasses, etc. Anyway, it is similar to the treasure pile in the dragon's lair, but here, it is likely to be a version that has been magnified several times.
FK. But this is the only word Hayden expresses emotions.
He has never seen treasures too much. When pirates were caught during the naval period, those pirates also grabbed a lot of treasures. However, he had never seen the scene in front of him. The entire cabin was filled with valuable treasures, like things that were free of money and could be seen at hand. Those days of the Tianlong people are really comfortable. Hayden thought to himself, but suddenly remembered one of the most important things. How should he take away these treasures? He couldn't help but stroke his chin. I plan to meditate and think about it. However, the time now does not allow him to think more. Anyway, when you are short of money, just go to the Golden Emperor. Hayden thought so, and then took out a backpack from his body. Although he can't take away all the treasures, he can take away part of the treasures. No matter what, he can't do it in vain.
Advertisement. Suddenly, during the time he was pretending to be treasures, the alarm bells of his sights and hearing suddenly became louder, and there seemed to be something on the red earth continent above his head. It was not right. Someone should come down.
Is it finally here? Hayden frowned, then stopped his movements. Looking around the treasures around him, he thought for a while, since I can't get much, then don't you want to take it easily? Then, Hayden, who was carrying a few tons of treasure on his back, went out of the way and blasted the ship's cabin with heavenly gold into a big hole and blasted the bottom of the ship. The sea water immediately poured back into the cabin. The thick smoke produced by the explosion also slowly rose to the sky, from various gaps in the cabin. Hayden rushed out of the cabin and onto the slightly pouring deck. However, he just wanted to take his time to leave, but suddenly stopped. Because, the person who had just been aware of what he had seen and heard has now appeared in front of him. Seeing the visitor who was obviously beyond him and wearing a coat of justice, Hayden had a hearty smile on his face. Oh, good noon. He hit the visitor not far in front. Call. At this time, the gloomy sky that was at war just now has quietly cleared up. The dazzling sunlight at noon happened to be cast on this ship, illuminating the pure gold trim of the hull, reflecting the eye-catching light.
However, this eye-catching light is not good either. Maybe it's coming from the body of the person, and the reflection of the light coming out of it is not necessarily true.
Chapter 267 Ba Kai Chong Go Yu Previous chapter Next chapter.
Advertisement. Boy. Lieutenant General Huang Yuan of the Navy headquarters, he carefully examined Hayden's face. It's really you. The indifferent expression on his face immediately changed into a serious look. Yes, it's me. Hayden smiled and shrugged, and exchanged greetings with Lieutenant General Huang Yuan.
Of course, if he was faced with such a situation 3 years ago, then he would definitely turn around and run immediately. But now, there is no problem with double skinning. Little devil, are you coming out in 3 years for this?
Huang Yuan asked toward Hayden, looking at the treasure with a foot in the backpack behind him. At the same time, he was also preparing to attack secretly. He didn't want to have been looking for this kid for more than 3 years, but now he suddenly found him, but let him run away. If this kid were allowed to escape again, the people of the world government would have already caused him trouble. Now if he knew that he had let this kid run away again, the situation would be really bad. Haha. Hayden nodded and replied, after all, in 3 years, I always spent. Whoosh. A flash of light suddenly fired from Huang Yuan's body, interrupting Hayden's words.
However, Hayden just turned sideways slightly, and easily avoided this unexpected attack.
There was no flash of light hitting it, and it shot straight into the cabin behind. A violent explosion was suddenly produced, and the vibration instantly spread throughout the hull. The cabin was full of flames, and while billowing black smoke rose, it also made the sound of collapse. Hayden didn't turn around to look back at the situation. Hey, Uncle Huang Yuan, when did you learn to sneak attack? This is not right with the position of Lieutenant General in this department. He complained to Huang Yuan not far in front of him, without a trace of surprise on his face. Little devil. Huang Yuan did not answer his question, and narrowed his eyes. Advertisement. Hey. Hayden shrugged. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't answer, but I should go. After speaking, he assumed a posture that he planned to leave, as if he hadn't considered the existence of the yellow ape at all.
Huang Yuan didn't speak, and directly shot Hayden again with a flash of light.
However, there was a sudden bang sound, which was the sound of Hayden slamming on the deck.
His figure disappeared on the deck at the last moment the flash arrived in front of him.
Losing the flash of the attacking target, he once again blasted the cabin behind Hayden. After receiving a flash of light, the cabin that was about to collapse was completely destroyed. The thick smoke soaring into the sky suddenly rose, and after suffering Hayden's ghostly way and the yellow ape's 2 flashes, the big ship finally started and slowly sank into the sea. Hayden's figure flickered in the sky, and gradually left the area of Honggang. Call out. A flash of light suddenly cut in front of Hayden, preventing him from moving forward. Later, Huang Yuan's figure appeared behind Hayden. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Hayden turned around and smiled at him.
Without saying a word, it suddenly started towards the sea below. Huang Yuan's expression did not change, and the figure immediately followed Hayden's direction and shot down. The figures of the two at this time, like meteors falling from space, made 2 very obvious trajectories in the sky, one in front and one behind, closely adhering to each other. While pursuing, Huang Yuan kept moving towards Hayden, launching his own flash attacks. Little devil. He shouted at Hayden, who had been in front of him. What, you hid for 3 years, and you still run around after you came out? Huang Yuan provoked Hayden, intending to let him relax. Advertisement. But Hayden didn't care about this guy's sarcasm. His speed didn't decrease at all, and he looked back at the yellow ape who was chasing him behind him. If you have the ability, just catch me today. You couldn't catch me 3 years ago, and it will be the same fact 3 years later. His tone was full of mockery.
Quote. Huang Yuan's brows suddenly frowned. Without speaking, he immediately increased the power and speed of the flash. At once, several flashes in yellow, a flash that can smash a mountain, shoot at Hayden at a super high speed. However,
with his back to the yellow ape, Hayden rushed all the way down.
He didn't look back, but he seemed to have a pair of eyes on his back, able to capture super fast targets, and his eyes with extremely strong dynamic vision easily caught the movement trajectory of the incoming flash and then dodged it. Throughout the process, there was no turning back. Huang Yuan was a little surprised at once, and continued to increase the power of the flash, as well as the frequency and speed of its emission.
For a time, the entire sky was dazzling yellow flashes, concealing its own natural light. The yellow flash of light, at this moment, is even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. Hayden dodged back and forth in an extremely exaggerated way of traveling in this dense flashing beam. Although he himself escaped the flash attack perfectly every time. And on his back, A large bag of treasures beyond the size of his body did not avoid being wiped out by the flash. The backpack was melted into a large gap, and the treasures contained in it immediately fell like rain. Hayden immediately noticed the weight loss on his back. At the last moment, he also caught a glimpse of the treasures appearing beside him, but his own speed was several times faster than the speed of those treasures. Advertisement in an instant, Hayden swooped down, leaving the treasure far behind him. The hat hanging on the back was constantly fluttering in the strong wind. Hayden glanced back in the direction behind him. I saw it. At this moment, all kinds of treasures in the sky were covered, and they were immediately attacked by the flash of the yellow ape behind that. In a blink of an eye, they melted into fine dust, leaving only the burned-out gas in the sky, which also means the last second, they exist. Hayden's words stuck in his throat, numb, and he didn't catch anything this time. Hayden, who was in a very unhappy mood, took a deep breath, taking in as much air as possible. Then, a fierce boy plunged in, and he was already in front of him at the moment. Boom! Suddenly, because of Hayden's strong penetration, a strong wave rose on the surface of the sea. However, seeing Hayden enter the sea where they are inconvenient for the devil fruit ability to enter, Huang Yuan still did not stop his attack. On the contrary, his attack was even more violent than before. Bachichang Guyu. His whole person was transformed into a pure energy body at this moment. It bloomed with a dazzling light that was even more dazzling than the sun, swallowing all the surrounding light for a time, leaving him alone. Standing in the air more than 10 meters above the sea, he posed a pose and directed numerous shots of extremely powerful light bombs towards the sea below. At once, just one light bomb that can blast off a pirate ship suddenly appeared as many as the stars in the sky. The dense light bombs covered the entire area of the sea, forming a firepower net with no gaps. Chapter 268 Escape the World That Shakes Again. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Shu. The intensive light bomb attack, at a speed of more than 1,000 rounds per minute, and possibly even more than 10,000 rounds per minute, fired toward the sea and into the sea. Suddenly, the sea was still calm just now, and was hit by this fierce firepower, bursting into holes, bursting into the sky, and rolling turbulently. The whole situation was like the sea was boiled by the flash of light. However, the flash disappeared and stopped without touching the sea. The flash had been chasing Hayden's figure, slanting through the sea, seeming to intend to keep Hayden's action and dive under the deep sea.
Bang bang bang. The explosion caused by the flash caused a continuous series of explosions in the sea water. Hayden glanced sideways at the situation next to him, and found that the flash was still behind him. If I don't stop, I won't be able to hold it anymore. Then, before he realized it, the flash explosion suddenly stopped, and the surrounding seawater finally returned to a calm state.
Hayden stopped sprinting in the water and turned to look behind him. At this time, only the bubbles caused by the explosion were left in the sea, and there was still a trace of it that did not dissipate. As for the flash of Huang Yuan, it has quietly disappeared.
Hayden, who hadn't caught anything, continued to swim a certain distance in the seawater before coming out of the seawater. Hayden escaped smoothly from Huang Yuan, after making a mess of the heavenly gold and killing Doflamingo. Then, Hayden didn't stay in the air too much. According to the direction of the pointer, he first found an island at will. Then, according to the method of inquiring about the news, he went to the place where he had agreed with the White Dragon fleet. The thing is done. He also needs to pass the Fisherman Island again, cross the Red Earth continent, and return to the first half of the Great Route. A few hours after Hayden escaped from Huang Yuan. Advertisement. Due to the fact that Hayden suddenly appeared in Hong Kong, the target he had been pursuing, Hong Kong has now been completely blocked by people from the world government and people from the G1 branch who came to support, and no one is allowed to enter or leave. But, before all of them arrived, a considerable number of people had already left Honggang, carrying the shocking news from Hayden. It doesn't take long. About Hayden, the guy who killed the Dragon Man 3 years ago, another shocking news has been quickly printed on the printing presses of various newspapers. This kind of news that will definitely shock the world again, no matter the newspaper, they want to get it out the first time. Lieutenant General Huang Yuan of the Navy headquarters was standing in the port of Honggang with a senior official of the world government. Both of them looked at the endless sea ahead. Yellow Ape. Why did you let that kid go again? Quote. Well, the little devil's strength has risen a lot in the past 3 years. Huang Yuan showed a helpless expression. I didn't even get to the little devil's body just now. He shrugged. Replied. Harm. The people of the world government didn't know what to say, and walked away from Huang Yuan with the first stroke. After one day. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi, Holy Place Mary Joya, in a conference hall. Look. The news that the kid came out. Is it fun to be treated by these guys? The general of the warring states period took a stack of newspapers and slapped the round table. At this time, this conference room gathered with General Sengoku, General Zepha, Lieutenant General Pelusolino, Lieutenant General Sakaski, and people from the world government. They gathered together for nothing else, just for the situation that Hayden reappeared. In today's newspaper advertisement, Hayden's appearance in Red Harbor yesterday, killing Doflamingo, and destroying the ships of the Heavenly Gold have been reported as something worth celebrating. This is an event development that the world government does not want to see, and what the kid said in Hong Kong yesterday made them feel a little uneasy. At the same time, elsewhere on the sea, Newsbird will bring today's latest newspaper to all the places where people appear on this sea. 4 seas, a paradise of great sea routes, a new world. Everywhere received the latest news about Hayden. The front page of the newspaper once again published the picture of Hayden 3 years ago, so that when they saw the newspaper today, they had a strange illusion at the first time, but they waited for them to read on. East China Sea, the Kolbo Mountains in the Kingdom of Goa. Luffy. Mackinaw shouted to Luffy, who lived in the bandit house, and the village chief of Windmill Village was standing beside her. Luffy inside the house heard this familiar voice, and immediately moved. He hurried to the door of the house. Marquino. He shouted loudly, with a very happy expression on his face, and at the same time hurried over and hugged Mackinaw's thigh. Ha 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 ha. The two smiled. It looks very energetic, Luffy. Maginot looked at Luffy carefully and said to him with a smile. Ha ha ha. The smile on Luffy's face couldn't stop. He also looked in the direction of the village chief. Oh. The village chief. He was very excited when he saw an acquaintance. I'm here today to bring you something. Maginot looked at Luffy's eyes and said, by the way, what about Ace and others? As she said, she took it from the basket in her hand. Something out. Oh. That's great. Advertisement. Luffy saw what Mackinaw had brought. His eyes were shining with Bulinbulin inside. He took the things and told Mackinaw. Oh, yes. Marquino thought of something and took out a newspaper from the basket. Luffy, I think you might want to read this. She handed the newspaper in her hand to Luffy. Nani? A question mark appeared on Luffy's head, and he took the newspaper questioningly. Isn't the person in this newspaper the same seagrass person? He was shocked at once. That guy is so amazing. He can actually be in the newspaper. He showed envy. The first half of the Great Route. A woman in the dust took over the newspaper from Newsbird.
Looking at the front page of the newspaper, the person in the photo made her and her heart beat again. She wanted to follow the news that appeared in the newspaper Shanghai, and traveled many places, but she was always slower by one step, perhaps by a lot of steps.
She didn't know what to do after finding Hayden, maybe her original identity. After finding that guy, she just made him look like he was a kid again.
But, after knowing that Hayden was still alive, she never gave up the idea of looking for him. And the other oppressed places of the Great Sea Route. They saw the man who dared to pierce the sky 3 years ago appeared again on the sea, and this time that man not only appeared, he also expressed his true inner thoughts to the world. The meaning of Hayden's words. It is like lighting up a lighthouse for many people walking in the dark storm, pointing out a bright channel for them all. Haiyuan Calendar 1514. It can be called the most important historical turning point after the opening of the Great Pirate Era. Chapter 269. Your Excellency will live here tonight. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. After that, Hayden once again came to the Murloc Island at a depth of 10,000 meters by the White Dragon fleet that was preparing to return to the first half. If I don't come back tomorrow, you can go first. Hayden, who changed his disguise, told the captain of the White Dragon fleet, Gerard. Then, he didn't explain much, and the figure suddenly disappeared from the deck. The speed below the Fisherman Island could not be noticed by everyone, straight into the sky, towards the gate that connects the Fisherman Island to the Dragon Palace King City. Of course, the defense device of the Dragon Palace King City did not notice Hayden's arrival. Stop in front of the gate. Hayden followed the Neptune method of the previous time and went to the bottom of a button in front of the gate and pressed the button. Hey, is anyone there? From the other end of the phone, there was a noise in the answering room of the Dragon Palace King City, which seemed to be startled by the sudden sound. Hey, who are you? Report your name. The person who answered heard a strange voice, and he didn't have a good tone. Ordinary people can't come. They're the entrance of the Dragon Palace King City that connects to the Fisherman Island. Someone. Hayden said to himself, I am an acquaintance of your King Neptune. I visited his acquaintance the other day. I came alone. You King Neptune will understand this when he hears this. An acquaintance of King Neptune. A small question came from the phone worm. After a moment of silence, the person who answered the phone did not dare to delay the king's affairs, but the most important thing was that ordinary people could not come to their high-altitude entrance.
Subsequently, the news passed to King Neptune, and he has often seen Hayden's news in the newspapers these days. Of course, he remembered that it was probably Hayden who came to their Fisherman Island. He asked a team of guards to pick up the sea from the gate and bring the man here. Advertisement. Enter the Dragon Palace King City.
Hayden was brought to a very hidden room by the guards who came to pick him up. It was no longer the throne hall at the front entrance. Hayden didn't think much, and walked in with the guard. The rooms are still similar to other rooms in this Dragon Palace. In order to take care of the king's huge size, all rooms are designed to be extremely large. There is no problem even flying a kite in the room, as long as there is wind in the room. There was no King Neptune in the room, nor any other person. The guards who led him in also left the room and closed the door. Hayden didn't worry that King Neptune would not set him an ambush or other things. Just as he was thinking this way, another door in the room was pushed open. The two who walked into the room were King Neptune and Princess Odahime, the highest authority of Murloc Island. Hayden took off the baseball cap that was sitting on his head and took off his sunglasses. King Neptune, Princess Odahime. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Hayden paid his respects to the two of them, with a smile on his face. But King Neptune didn't have Hayden's mood at this time. Not long after this kid left his Fisherman Island, he went to provoke the Tinlongren again and killed a Kiwahai directly. Neptune had already fully understood at this time that this kid, from head to toe, was the kind that would cause trouble all over his body. The expression of Princess Odahime, although not like that of King Neptune, was not much different. Hayden saw the expressions of the two of them, and knew that they would not easily agree to him. This time, he still came to brush his presence in front of the two of them.
In addition, he also specifically came to see where there are places on Murloc Island where he can do tasks. It's like you are playing a game. In order for a certain NPC to give you what you want, you have to do the tasks assigned by him.
Advertisement. Hayden thought to himself, Fishman Island is so chaotic at this time, there will always be some tasks before him. 2. I believe you have read the newspapers these days. King Neptune and Princess Odahime in front of Hayden said. That's just one step for me. You also understand my strength roughly. I will form a huge team in a short time. But if everything after this, there will be help from the Fisherman Island, it will make a great contribution to this event, which will definitely be a worldwide event. At that time, the goal everyone wanted was achieved. The people of the world will not only accept you Murlocs and mermaids, but will also accept you sincerely. Hayden gave an exciting speech. He didn't know if Neptune and Odahime were emotionally touched, at least he was a little bit excited in his heart. King Neptune and Princess Odahime stared at Hayden without speaking. Neptune didn't know why he let Hayden come up. Perhaps it was because he was afraid that Hayden would be found on the Fisherman Island, which is even worse than the situation at the moment.
After a moment of silence. Sorry, Lord Hayden, Neptune said to Hayden, with a serious expression on his face, I won't agree to your proposal. Your arrival has caused a lot of trouble to our Fisherman Island. Tonight Your Excellency can live in Dragon Palace City, but please leave the Fisherman Island as soon as possible tomorrow morning.
Guest. Hayden was not surprised by King Neptune's reaction. However, just as he was about to say something, a panicked voice suddenly came from outside the room. It's not good, Dracos, there is a ship that landed in the port. The Dracos. The shouting of the guards could be heard clearly even in the room. Advertisement Denon. This word suddenly caused Neptune and Odahime to become extremely nervous, and the expressions on their faces instantly sank. Let them enter, and the emergency forces go to the coast. While shouting, Princess Odahime hurried towards the door of the room with a serious expression. King Neptune looked at Hayden and left a word, saying that his affairs have been arranged, and someone will tell him later. After that, both of them hurriedly left the room. However, Hayden is not deaf, and of course he also heard the term, Dragon Man. There was a Dragonite on the ship in disaster. When was this story? Curious in his heart, he followed the direction of the two people in front of him, quietly, and also left Dragon Palace City. At the same time, on the port of Murloc Island, a huge, damaged ship landed at the port of Murloc Island. At first glance, this ship was obviously a ship in distress, but none of the fishers near the port came forward to rescue. Why? The sails of this huge ship are painted with pictures of the world government, and on the bow, there are decorations representing the noble status of the Dragon Man. Both the Murloc and the Mermaid know what this ship represents. It means that they won't save anything, the shit who died. Chapter 270 Don't shoot. Previous chapter. Next chapter advertisement. A ship dedicated to the Tianlong people. As if it had been attacked by some kind of terrifying sea beast, there was a bite mark on the side of the hull. The sail was damaged, the mast was damaged, and of course the hull itself was also horribly damaged. They were extremely lucky to be able to land this ship to the Fisherman Island port in this situation. On the seabed at a depth of 10,000 meters, being bitten by a sea beast to burst the coated bubble is not a beautiful seabed memory. Because of the arrival of the dragon people, it caused a commotion in the port of Fishman Island. The mermaid and fish people near the port were shocked, and began to whisper to the people around them. At the beginning, there was a lot of discussion about the unexpected arrival of the Tianlong people. At this time, a guy covered in blood fell from the ship of the Heavenly Dragon and slammed hard on the solid road of the port, making his already injured body more painful. Boom! The man who fell was holding a pistol, and he shot at the Murlocs and Mermaids onlookers at will, not caring whether the bullets fired would hit people. This guy is the Dragon Man that day. The onlookers Mermaid and Murloc, watching this guy's behavior and the outfit on this guy, immediately realized this.
And at the same time, the first aid troops of the Dragon Palace King City rushed to the port of Fishman Island and rushed to the vicinity of the ship that was killed. Not only did they arrive, but the medical team also arrived at the scene at the same time. As long as they gave an order, they could immediately rescue the dead dragons. However, the smell of fish here is so strong, it's almost killing me. Advertisement, idiots. Get the mask soon. Tinlongren lying on the ground. Using the pistol in his hand, while shooting randomly around, he ordered the fish in front of him to do as he ordered. The doctor. Call a doctor. The call of one person from the Tianlong was spread far away in the silent port of the Fisherman Island, reaching the ears of every mermaid or fisher present. The guards who had arrived at the scene a long time ago did not take any action against the Tianlong fever, so they continued to watch coldly around them. At this time, suddenly, a group of Murlocs with the logo of the Murloc Pirate Group came to the front of the dragon in a quiet atmosphere. Anyone can feel that killing intent is rising from this group of guys. You are my slaves. Go back with me obediently, whoever allows you to be free, fishes. With red blood on his face and even one of his front teeth fell off, the Tinlongren lay on the ground and raised their heads and shouted at the group of Murlocs and pirates in front of them. It seems that, in his own concept, as long as he makes a sound, these fish people with different weapons in their hands and an ugly expression on their faces will obediently do what he says. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. The Murloc pirate who took the lead, looked down at the Tinlongren lying on the ground, without saying anything, directly aimed the pistol at the Tinlongren's head. Stop it, you guys. He's a celestial dragon. If you do it, it's over. When the crowd onlookers saw this, they were immediately frightened and subconsciously shouted loudly.
And the Tin Longren who was pointed at by the muzzle of the black hole, he didn't seem to figure out the situation. Idiot, stop me. You guys who don't know what to do, who do you think of me? The Murloc pirate who took the lead frowned and explained to him clearly.
Advertisement. On land, Your Majesty is maintained only because of the Admiral's obligation to dispatch for you. But this is the seabed. As long as all of us remain silent, this will only be a marine accident.
The meaning of the words made this heavenly dragon whose mind hadn't completely turned into a muddle, and he immediately understood what would happen to him next. He was frightened, stunned. Makes sense, I will remain silent. Me too. The mermaid and fish people onlookers nearby heard a sound of agreement. Before a second has passed, everyone around them yelled and made an emotional sound.
Kill him! Kill him! A wave of killing intent sounded at the port of Fishman Island, aimed at the killing intent of the Tianlongren.
The Murloc pirate who took the lead, with a calm face, said coldly to the Tinlongren lying on the ground. Even if we want to forgive you, we can't do it for you. Don't. The Tinlongren said that there is no humble tone in this generation. Go. Kill him. The mood of the fish people around has risen to the extreme. Boom, the trigger was pulled, and the muzzle glowed. However, at this time, where everyone's eyes were focused, the figure of Princess Odahime appeared.
Princess Odahime used her own body to protect the Tianlongren who was on the ground, and the bullet grazed her shoulder.
Advertisement, His Royal Highness. His Royal Highness was shot. The faces of the Murlocs onlookers showed unbelievable expressions, and the female mermaids did not even dare to watch what happened with their eyes. Put down all the guns.
King Neptune, the majestic voice immediately exploded in the harbor.
Like a thunderstorm, the Murloc and pirates couldn't help letting go of their palms. The guns in their respective hands immediately fell to the ground, making a banging sound. And Hayden was watching the show, on the side. He looked at the scene before him, and finally recalled the plot from a small corner in his memory.
It seems that afterwards, this Tianlongren didn't know how to be persuaded and reformed by Princess Odahime, as if he had changed himself and became a good person. Then, Princess Odahime returned to the Fisherman Island with the approval of the dragon people for their proposal to move to the land on the Fisherman Island.
Now that there is a dragon, but in the subsequent plot, why is the Fisherman Island still in the seabed? Hayden pondered, and after a while, he immediately remembered why the Murloc Island was still in the deep sea behind. Princess Odahime is likely to be killed by the Murloc Street for a while. And the initiator of Princess Odahime's proposal, coupled with the continued slander and the proposal to move to land, naturally sank to the bottom of the sea, which was deeper than Murloc Island. Suddenly thinking about what kind of development might be going on in the future, Hayden had an idea in his heart, and at the same time he planned to stay on Fishman Island for a while.
After all, if it really develops as he thinks after this, the addition of Murloc Island, a planet that is basically occupied by the sea in this area, Murloc and Mermaid, will definitely play a big role at that time.
Then, during Hayden's thinking about this short period of time, Princess Odahime and King Neptune had almost controlled the chaos. Suddenly, someone seems to have come to the port. At the same time, the Tinlongren who was rescued by Princess Odahime picked up the pistol in his hand and was about to aim at Princess Odahime in front of him. Chapter 271, Sea King, Poseidon previous chapter next chapter. Advertisement The Celestial Dragon who was rescued by Princess Odahime. He quietly picked up his pistol on the ground when everyone did not focus on him, but on the injured mermaid in front of him. At the same time, the muzzle was aimed at the head of the mermaid in front of him. It seems that the mermaid in front of him is very noble on this Fisherman Island. Thinking like this, he planned to use the merman in front of him as a hostage, threatening the group of Murlocs in front of him who were going to kill him. At the same time, suddenly a group of people plunged into the crowd watching at the port. When the crowd saw who came, they hurriedly gave way to the group. The people here are the Princess White Star of Murloc Island, the three Neptune brothers behind him, and the captain of the new Sun Pirates, the king of Kiwahai, known as the Seaman, Jinping. Although Bai Xing is only 6 years old now, her body shape is different from other people, so that she can see what happened in the direction of her mother, Princess Odahime, for the first time. See the Dragon Man's actions that day behind him. This short moment. Seeing the stranger pointed the gun at his mother. Mother danger. she yelled in a panic. Immediately afterwards, everyone present was heard by her, and focused their attention on Princess Odahime, and at the same time saw the actions of the dragon people that day. Everyone showed bad expressions on their faces and wanted to step forward to stop them. But, at this moment, Bai Xing's reaction was the fastest. A very strong mood broke out instinctively in her heart. So much so that she couldn't help screaming out, as if to release the emotion that was rising in her heart at the moment as a real sound wave. Advertisement, mother, she yelled, cried.
He swears in Hayden, who was standing by the side, watching the show, that he had never felt that the cry of a kid would be so shocking. At this moment, Bai Xing's cry was like a wave of air produced by a big bang, instantly centering on her, spreading and sweeping away in all directions.
Layers of waves appeared on the sea, and even the clouds in the sky were cleared away.
Of course, the surrounding people were shocked by the shout of Princess White Star, so that there were countless people who were shocked.
After a while, the sound waves that spread far away brought back something frightening. No, something should have been summoned.
Boom. The entire huge Murloc port seemed to be occupied by super large sea beasts in an instant. 1, 2, and 3. The dragon boat that had been parked in the harbor had already been swallowed up by the sea beasts and disappeared. The 3 giant beasts also seemed to want to join this port drama, using eyes bigger than a house, staring down at all the people in the port.
Aquaman class. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Everyone in the harbor showed expressions that couldn't believe what they saw before them. They went up to Princess Odahime and Jinpei, and went down to the ordinary mermaid and Murloc of Murloc Island. Of course, except Hayden, he eats these guys for lunch. As for the Tinlongren, after being shocked for the first time, he rolled his eyes and foamed at the mouth. Naturally, he also lost the thread to Princess Odahime.
At this time, the 3 giant sea kings seemed to perceive something. After the Tianlongren fainted, they left the port of the Fisherman Island on their own, just like they came quietly, and left without disturbing anyone.
However, the atmosphere of Fishman Island was still as dead as before. Advertisement. It's just that, now that everyone is leaving because of the Sea Kings, they don't look like they were scared just now.
There was once a legend. In that distant past, there was an incredible power that existed in the sea. It is said that there is a mermaid princess who can even obey her orders. The ancient legend immediately emerged in the hearts of those who saw this scene and heard about it. The legend became reality before their eyes. What was that just now? This is not an accident. The expression on Jinping's face became solemn, and he looked at Princess Baixing, who was still crying at this time. And Princess Odahime's eyes widened in surprise. She looked in the direction of Baixing, and she didn't know what to say. The same thing happened to King Neptune. Regarding what is happening to their daughter now, they naturally didn't understand what happened at the first time, but the second time, their expressions suddenly change. At the same time, my ancestor, I finally found her. A voice from a little far away came into Hayden's ears, who was watching. The meaning of this voice reminded him of something again. He frowned and turned to look at the source of the voice. Seeing and hearing color scanning the past, he perceives and sees. There is a very ugly guy with spider legs on his lower body. Moreover, his eyes flashed as if he had seen something he had dreamed of, obviously looking at the white star who was still crying. This guy, it seems that Bai Xing will be very troubled in the future. Hayden thought to himself. Anyway, it's here, and it won't be a big deal to solve the trouble of Murloc Island in advance. After he decided to find a time, and then deal with the trouble. Advertisement after that. Even though the Tinlongren intended to take himself as a hostage, Princess Odahime saved him. And Hayden certainly did not choose to leave the next day. Since I remembered this story, of course I wouldn't choose to go at this time. Similarly, although this may be a bit shameless, it may also be a wrong decision. But Hayden didn't choose to go directly to Murloc Street, and kill the Murloc who might kill Odahime in the later plot. He needs the Murloc to help him a little bit. And the Murloc who would throw darts and throwing axes to Bai Xing in the future. The guy's actions hadn't started yet, and Hayden didn't want to go to Murloc Street twice. In short, Kwandong has been traveling on Fishman Island for a while. A few weeks later, the Tinlongren's treatment was over, and he survived the accident on the seabed.
However, on the day that the Dragonite was about to leave by boat, Princess Odahime of Fishman Island planned to follow the Dragonite. Neptune, White Star, the three Neptune brothers, and the people of Murloc Island who followed, all showed puzzled expressions. And Princess Odahime still showed her appearance as Princess Odahime. Princess Odahime, following the Tinlongren, embarked on a journey to land. Hayden watched the departure of the dragon boat. Basically everything in front of him did not differ much from the plot. He knew that as long as Princess Odahime returns, then it must be when the plot appears. The dragon boats gradually disappeared from the sight of everyone. Hayden's figure had already disappeared from the back of the crowd. Chapter 272 Gironde Square Previous chapter Next chapter.
Advertisement. After a quiet week. For Neptune and White Star, the three Neptune brothers and others.
Endless restlessness makes it hard to sleep at night, after a week of life like a year.
The dragon boat sailed into the port of the Fisherman Island.
And this time is different from the last time the ship came in. This time, the mermaid and fish people gathered in the port, as if they were afraid that they would never see it again. They blocked the port station. Side by side, crowded. Everyone can't help but raise their heads slightly and look at the approaching ship. Everyone's face was filled with excitement, and some of the more excited guys even had tears on their faces.
His Royal Highness Odahime. Great. As long as you can come back alive, we will.
Welcome back, Your Highness Odahime. The citizens of Fishman Island, with the most real, most excited, and most respected mood, welcome everyone, His Highness Odahime, to return safely. There was a boiling sound in the port. The enthusiasm in the air infected everyone present. Now, because of his request and the warning he gave to King Neptune and Princess Odahime in advance, Hayden himself asked to join their royal guard.
It's nothing. The main reason is that if you want to stay close to the royal family on the Fisherman Island, the role of the guard is an excellent choice, and at the same time, for himself, it is also an excellent disguise.
Advertisement. As for not being able to breathe in the sea for a long time, he might be aware of something wrong, as well as questions that might be caused by covering his face. King Neptune continued. The guard dared to question. Of course, all of Hayden's actions were based on the fact that Neptune did not dare to inform the world government. And he was also quite sure that he couldn't beat Hayden, a human being, above. Standing next to Neptune, watching Princess Odahime slowly disembark, Hayden understood that the next moment was the most critical moment, and it must not be screwed up. Gironde Square. Under the escort of the king's guard led by Hayden, Princess Odahime and several ministers came to the central podium of this square. The citizens who greeted Princess Odahime also came to the square following in the footsteps of Princess Odahime. Not only that, watching the huge team walking towards the square, some citizens on the Fisherman Island who did not go to the port to meet Princess Odahime due to delays, they also joined the moving team at this time. After Princess Odahime stood on the podium in the square, the huge square was already full of people from the Fisherman Island, and even the space to turn around was almost squeezed out. If the scene before him is not crowded, then Hayden doesn't know what words to use to describe being hungry. At the very least, he hasn't seen such a large group of people. The noisy crowd at this time seemed to all receive an invisible signal, and everyone was strangely quiet at the same time.
At this time, Princess Odahime also raised her hand and spent countless efforts to obtain a list, and explained loudly to everyone present. Sad face. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. A word from the nobles of the world can also exert a powerful force in the meeting of the kings in the World Conference. This is a book written by the nobles of the world, and the content is, for the friendly exchanges between the Murlocs and humans, the countersign. I agree with the comments of the signatory. Princess Odahime paused and continued. In other words, at the World Conference, if many people put forward their opinions, this paper will give us more realistic power.
Moving to land, we will be able to do it, this moment. Princess Odahime was obviously just plain and plain. However, as her words spread throughout the square, the plain words were like frightening waves, surging in the hearts of all the people of Fishman Island, unable to calm down. Advertisement. Take the Tinlongren as a driving force. This is really, then, Princess Odahime continued to explain. So, what we need after this is more signatures. For me, I can only wait for your decision here. Please be sure to express the will to coexist with humans and the will to emigrate to land in the form of signature.
Words fall. Princess Odahime had finished saying everything she wanted to say, with a nervous expression on her face. And Hayden was watching the whole distance up close.
To be honest, as a human being, he couldn't understand how they felt at the moment.
But he also felt the atmosphere in the air at this moment. It was the smell of history happening right in front of his own eyes.
What Princess Odahime worried about did not happen. After listening to her words, after returning to their senses, the citizens on the square immediately began to move towards the signed box, for fear that something would be missing if they were too slow to catch up with others. Every Murloc or mermaid who came to the signed box in front of Princess Odahime had an expression of excitement on their faces.
The first time. This is the first time that the people of Fishman Island see hope that seems to be achievable.
In less than a moment, the high-profile signature box has been filled with everyone's list. However, the ranks of the crowd have not diminished at all, and so is the enthusiasm in the air. His Royal Highness Odahime. Advertisement, His Royal Highness Odahime. This kind of small box is not enough.
The cheers of the people at this moment seemed to be directly breaking through the 10,000 meters of seawater and breaking through the sea.
Fishman Island hasn't heard such passionate cheers for a long time.
Princess Odahime watched the scene in front of her, tears oozing from her eyes. These tears are tears of complex emotions, tears that have condensed every day and night for a long time. Hayden looked at the people of Murloc Island with excitement beyond imagination.
If they have such enthusiasm, maybe they can move to land on their own. Seeing the people's official list of the Fisherman Island in front of him, he kept floating into the box, but Hayden did not stop it.
At this time, suddenly, Hayden's sense of sight and hearing perceives that in a square like a square that can almost be described by the adjective of the sea of joy, a slight killing intent suddenly rises somewhere.
The cover is good. Just, Hayden frowned. Unknown man, your killing intent is in such an atmosphere, a scene completely different from your killing intent. Do you know that your current situation is like outstanding chickens?
Hayden thought to himself, and then he immediately locked the direction of killing intent.
The killing intent came from directly in front of Princess Odahime. Hayden contemplated suddenly, his gaze shot in that direction. For a second, he immediately locked the guy who was suspected of being a gunman. The smell of that guy was mixed with the breath of ordinary people, and it was very prominent. However, Hayden had no plans, and warned Princess Odahime that a danger was about to happen. Chapter 273 Assassination Against the Royal Family. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. The place where the killing intent rises is on the roof outside the square. Although Hayden couldn't see clearly with his eyes, the meaning was very obvious. There were a few blurry figures standing on the coral floor on the roof. A Murloc named Hody Jones. He is wearing a Murloc Island army costume, holding a spear in his hand, and his eyes are fixed on Princess Odahime on the round table in the center of the square. As a member of the Fisherman Island army, his duty should be to defend the safety of the Fisherman Island and the safety of the royal family. However, his task today is not to protect the safety of the royal family. He flashed his fierce eyes, staring in the direction of Princess Odahime. Looking at the ideal of Princess Odahime, her vision really seems to be about to come true, and then their Fisherman Island can coexist peacefully with humans. Hody Jones, he doesn't want such a future. Everything that humans have done to their race, he has always kept in his mind when he was very young, plus the hell environment surrounding Murloc Street. As time grew, the distorted resentment in his heart not only was not smoothed by time, but continued to increase. To realize his own dream, his dream of Hody Jones. For this reason, even if he had to kill a character like Princess Odahime, he had to achieve his goal. Killing Princess Odahime was only his first step. In the future, he will let the Fisherman Island be under his control, and then he will bloodbath Malin Vander and kill all the human kings in the world, thus opening the horrible legend of the Undersea Kingdom. At this moment, he watched a ray of fire rising from the round platform in the center of the square, and slowly raised his spear. At the same moment, just when Hayden's attention was all on the far side of the square. Without warning, the box on the side used to hold the list suddenly burst into flames. It was not the kind of fire that burned slowly, but the flame that rose like an explosion. Advertisement, quickly leave. The fire is about to burn. Come on and put out the fire. Numerous guards guarding the side of Princess Odahime. The response was swift and immediately began to organize personnel operations, while instructing the densely packed ordinary people not to panic.
Hayden was a little surprised at this. What the group of guys used to light the fire was so convenient and so concealed.
However, although he could put out the fire at once and save those already piled up on the National Administration list, he did not act immediately.
Because, taking advantage of this moment of chaos in the square,
a bullet came from the roof of the square in the distance. In the noisy panic caused by the fire in the square, the sniper bullet seemed to be silent, piercing the air, flying over everyone's head, and the bullet aimed straight at the body of Princess Odahime.
None of the people in the square noticed the abnormal noise. Even if someone noticed, in this case, they were afraid to suspect that they had the hallucinations. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Of course, everyone on the square does not include Hayden.
Hayden instantly wrapped the small stone he held in his hand with the armed color, turning it into a shiny black small stone, like obsidian. The bullet fired by the sniper spear came to Princess Odahime in almost an instant. At this moment, a moment that seems to be slowed down at this moment. Even if the surrounding atmosphere was very chaotic, Princess Odahime could finally perceive the bullet that was shot at her. However, she had no chance to avoid the bullet. Whoosh! The last moment. Hayden, who was holding the pebbles, moved in front of Princess Odahime and threw it away.
Advertisement. The speed of the pebbles exceeded the rate of fire that ordinary spears could achieve, and even made a strange howling in the air.
Boom! The pebbles accurately hit the incoming bullet. After the two made a slightly louder noise, the sniper bullet was intercepted by an ordinary pebble.
Ding ding. The bullet and the stone landed at the same time.
Then, in the last second, the square was still slightly noisy. At this time, because of the sound of the impact, it became quiet in an instant. Princess Odahime was startled. Everyone around her was also stunned, and among them were the three brothers of White Star and Neptune, as well as Kiwoo Jinping. After the bullet hits the ground, Jinping also later realized what happened in the air just now. Someone was preparing to assassinate Odahime and stop the bullet.
He glanced at Hayden, who was covered by the helmet. Although he was curious about Hayden, it was not the time for him to be curious about such things at this time.
"Protect your Highness Odahime," Jinping shouted. At the same time, I quickly checked around to see which direction was suspicious and the bullet came from that direction. At this moment, Odahime, who was startled, also recovered instantly. She turned her side and glanced at Hayden, then withdrew her gaze. She understood that the warning Hayden had previously given her was true. At the same time, there was no doubt in her heart about Hayden. The suspicion was made by him. Because,
if this human wants to do something unfavorable to their Fishman Island, he can do it simply based on his strength. Why bother to do this?
Then, the trace of fright that still remained on her face just now disappeared. A perfect smile quickly appeared on her face, indicating that Xi Ping did not have to worry about her safety. Advertisement then, in Hayden's eyes. The Princess Odahime in front of her seemed to have performed some magic, almost just a few short words, which immediately calmed the anxiety and panic in the crowd, and calmed the frightened crowd. At the same time, Hody Jones, after firing a shot, he watched that his bullet was blocked by something invisible. The bullet did not have the effect it should have. Princess Odahime was still standing in the center of the square. Blue veins appeared on Hody's forehead, and his fangs clenched together. Things did not develop as he imagined in his mind. Today's decision has already taken a lot of risk. If the goal he wants is not achieved, then things will be very bad in the future. Subsequently, driven by the twisting resentment that suddenly increased in his heart, Hody took the risk and fired a second shot at Princess Odahime. However, boom! Although Hayden did not expect that this guy would dare to fire a second shot, the bullet was easily blocked by him at random. But, the sound of this second shot made the three Neptune brothers, who were already extremely vigilant about their surroundings, as well as Jinping on the side, confirming the place where the shot was shot. Jinping immediately rushed in that direction, and left a sentence to protect His Royal Highness Odahime. After hearing this, the three Neptune brothers, under the escort of guards, prepared to take Bai Xing and their mother, Princess Odahime, to leave the now very unsafe square. Princess Odahime did not agree to their evacuation at this time. Because, she knew that if there was a human being hidden here, their lives would not be in danger.
Chapter 274 Goal achieved. Previous chapter. Next chapter.
Advertisement. As for why didn't Hayden feel the killing intent, then walked past and killed the guy in seconds? He can do this, and it's very easy for him. That's because, despite his shameful choice, he needs Murloc Island to be grateful to him, needs to make Odahime feel the real threat of death, and the kindness that Murloc Island owes.
And why he just prevented the assassination of Odahime, and didn't stop her now.
Although, if she relied on herself, on the Fish Island themselves, she moved the Fish Island to the ground. Then, it seems that his proposal to the Fisherman Island is naturally meaningless. He thought about it this way, but then Hayden thought about it again. If the Fisherman Island will be on the sea in the future, then their assistance from the Fisherman Island will naturally be better than the situation at a depth of 10,000 meters under the sea. On the contrary, it is more beneficial to him.
Not only did Hayden not intend to prevent the current actions of Murloc Island, he also wanted to help them.
As for the Fisherman Island, will he agree to join him?
Regarding this, Hayden held full confidence, believing him as a human group in this race. I believe that after the Fishman Island appeared on the sea, it might be because everyone's eyes in the world gathered on it at first, but after a while, human beings, that is, themselves, will definitely reveal evil thoughts about mermaids. Humans will become more rampant because of the convenience of Murloc Island on the sea, and the relationship between humans and Murlocs will definitely become worse. And all of this, when the time comes, the world government will probably not intend to intervene. Advertisement. Princess Odahime continued to comfort the people on the square, telling them not to panic or nervous. At the same time, under Jinhai's leadership, except for a group of guards who continued to stay in the square to protect His Royal Highness Odahime and Princess White Star and others, the rest of the teams all followed Jinhai and ran towards the place where the gun was shot. The people on the square listened to the voice of His Royal Highness Odahime, and looked at the figure of Shinpei leading the army quickly. The nervous and uneasy mood among them gradually calmed down.
After all, since His Highness Odahime is still here, then naturally there is nothing to worry about. At this time, the fire that started in the signature box was finally extinguished. Although many official lists have been burned to ashes. However,
as long as Princess Odahime is still here, there will be no major problems afterwards, as long as everyone fills in again.
The people of Fishman Island gathered in front of the signature box again, and started to fill in the line again. Seeing the number of signatures gradually recovering, the worries on Princess Odahime's face disappeared in the burning flame. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Princess Odahime looked at the worry on her three sons and Bai Xing's face. Now that everything was going on in an orderly manner, she didn't need to stand in the square and guard her heart.
Princess Odahime, accompanied by the minister, the three Neptune brothers, and Bai Xing, found a place to rest on the periphery of the square.
Of course, Hayden also followed Princess Odahime.
Who knows if that guy has gone crazy and attacked suddenly because he didn't succeed twice. If that guy comes, no one in Princess Odahime's guard team can stop him. At this time, advertisement. Hayden walked to the side of Princess Odahime, looked at the center of the square in front of her with her, and looked at the people on the Fisherman Island. One by one, they filled out their signature lists and put them into the newly brought big box. Princess Odahime, now what I said before, you should believe it. He said lightly, and paused. If I can protect you and Princess White Star here, but you want to shoot. Was the guy caught right away? Hearing this, Odahime slowly turned his head to look at Hayden, his eyes fixed on Hayden's face, as if intending to see through the helmet mask on his face the real thoughts under him. Just, not only the emotions revealed in his words, but also the emotions she felt in her own special experience. This Hayden, this human, it seems that they really just want to help them on the Fisherman Island, and have no other ideas. Perhaps if he had an idea, it was just what he had proposed before, and there was no real malice that humans had towards them. Her eyes flickered. Thank you, but if Shiping takes a shot, the person who shot will definitely be captured right away. She refused Hayden's help, her tone of confidence in Jinping. Hayden shrugged his shoulders, not paying attention. Oh, by the way,
The guy who shot just now is a Murloc, and he's also a member of your Murloc Island army. Hayden's faint words shocked Princess Odahime's soul.
What? Odahime screamed immediately, so much so that her voice alarmed the three Neptune brothers and the White Star nearby, as well as the ministers of Murloc Island.
When they looked at Hayden, who was obviously not a member of their Fisherman Island, they were already very vigilant, but because of Neptune's prior greetings, they did not care. Now this guy didn't know what he said, so that their mother, Odahime, was shocked. The three Neptune brothers and ministers immediately seemed to step forward. But the exclaimed Odahime immediately returned to normal. She did not look at her three sons and the minister, motioning them to stop. Advertisement Odahime's eyes stared at Hayden's eyes hidden under the helmet. Is what you said true? She spoke blankly, but after she asked herself, before Hayden could answer, she knew the answer to this question. Hayden, a human being, is obviously disdainful to lie about such small things, not to mention this kind of lie will only make the relationship between Murloc Island and him become bad. It was indeed the Murloc who shot, although she was shocked by this fact in her heart. After that, Hody Jones was not caught by Jinping. As a result, there was a bloody storm in the dark of Fishman Island. Because of the assassination of Princess Odahime, King Neptune's anger was as strong as never before. He carried out a series of thorough investigations, following the clues, little by little investigation to Murloc Street, an area that they had not been aware of carefully. Then, they found Hody Jones' head. However, Hayden had secretly solved Hody Jones before they found out. Of course, there's the Murloc who has already stared at the White Star. It's just that, on the Fisherman Island, I didn't know that guy did it. Then, what happened next on the Fisherman Island, he didn't know. He left the Fisherman Island directly. Anyway, he came to the Fisherman Island this time, just to make the Fisherman Island owe kindness to it for future use. Chapter 275 Sea Train New Previous Chapter Next Chapter.
Advertisement. Hayden left the Fisherman Island with the help of Fisherman Island.
Back to the first half of the Great Route. Hayden rested on the Chambord Islands for a while, then thought about what to do next. Regarding the Golden Emperor that I thought of earlier.
Hayden knew the guy's current intelligence location or something. Anyway, he was seen appearing in the New World. No matter what, it is absolutely impossible for that guy to be in the first half of the paradise now. And why? Hayden still went straight back to the first half of the paradise. This is not only to temporarily avoid the limelight of the Navy and the world government, but also because he intends to visit the city of Seven Waters first. To figure out in advance how much money it will cost to build the best ship in the world, and you also need to find a skilled craftsman to build this ship for him. Hayden wanted to build the ship as soon as possible, instead of waiting until all the money and other things were all there. Then he slowly waited for his ship to be in the dock and get up a little.
As for Hayden, how can he get to the city of Seven Waters? At this point, he thought of a relatively simple method.
Based on the nautical charts of the nearby seas he had seen during his naval period, he only had to go to the Marine headquarters, Marine Vatican, and then follow the strange currents connecting the Navy headquarters, Judicial Island, and Propulsion City directly to Judicial Island. Then, starting from Judicial Island, you can go directly to the city of Seven Waters. Not only can you avoid the magic triangle, you don't have to worry about getting lost in the air. Take a break. Hayden set off directly to the Navy headquarters. From the Chambord Islands to the Navy headquarters, he didn't need anything to give directions. In the sky, Hayden's figure was as small as a small black dot, and he would ignore it if he didn't pay attention. There was such a fast-moving black dot above the sky, flew over the Navy headquarters. Hayden wanted to play tricks again, but after chuckles twice, he didn't put the thoughts in his heart into action. After taking a look, he left the Navy headquarters directly before the guys in the headquarters had noticed the strange phenomenon.
Advertisement come to Judicial Island. He hasn't been to this place many times.
Hayden stepped on a white cloud. He looked down at the scope of the Judicial Island below, thinking in his heart that the current direction was the direction of the city of Seven Waters.
After thinking for a while, just when Hayden was distressed about which side to choose.
On the offshore of Judicial Island below, something seems to be coming from the sea towards Judicial Island.
Okay. Hayden couldn't help frowning, squinting to see.
That thing is like a black line, which is very conspicuous across the blue sea. Not a ship. Obviously. Woo 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 woo. A faint sound came from below, heard in Hayden's ears, like the sound of a train. Hayden suddenly remembered something in his mind. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Is the sea train ready now? Thinking like this, he immediately lowered his height downward, finding the clear appearance of the thing underneath that the line of sight of his eyes could see clearly. That is a train that can travel at sea. Hayden immediately understood what he saw, and at the same time, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but slightly cocked. Since the sea train appeared on the Judicial Island, and around the Judicial Island, it seems that there is only this place where the sea train can stop. Therefore, only the city of Seven Waters can go to the return journey of this sea train. Perfect. Hayden couldn't help but yelled in his heart. However, he was not prepared to go down the first time to buy tickets and get on the Tron.
Advertisement. Although none of the guys below are Hayden's opponents, since some troubles can be avoided, why not choose this way? Hayden waited in the sky for a while. Wait until the sea train departs, head towards where it came from, and drive away. Woo 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 woo. Thick smoke billowed from the chimney of the sea train, like the first breath from the nostrils when running.
The wheels accelerated slowly. Hayden followed the sea train in the sky for a while, until the outline of Judiciary Island disappeared on the sea level, and the train was full of blue sea in front of it. He descended towards the very end of the sea train car. With a thump, Hayden's feet steadily stepped on the end. Although there was a noise, the sound of the sea train itself was enough to cover up the sound of landing. Standing in front of the compartment door, Hayden first looked into the compartment through the small round window on the door. At the same time, he also scanned the front with the color of sight and hearing to see if anyone existed. There was no one in the seat in the front carriage.
Seeing and hearing the color, then continued to scan the past, 1 carriage, 2 carriages, and 3 carriages.
Hayden only scanned the 3 cars at the end, and there was no sign of anyone in the 3 cars at the end. Take back what you have seen and heard. He shrugged, then opened the door of the car and walked into the car. Think about it. The Judiciary Island is not a place with a lot of people, and there are naturally fewer people who can come out of that island. It should be normal for no one to exist. The reason for the opening of the route from the capital of Seven Waters to Judicial Island is estimated to be a dedicated route for the world government. Oh, right. When Hayden was in the Chambord Islands before, he had changed his disguise again. He has a sun hat on his head, big sunglasses on his face, a floral shirt on his body, a pair of beach trousers on his lower body, and a pair of pink flip-flops. And the 2 Zhanpo knives that he carries with him. He temporarily used a large piece of gray cloth to wrap up the 2 Zhanpo knives intact, temporarily sealing them off. Advertisement. After all, his 2 Zhanpak sabers are relatively well known. Shinbenying didn't show it to the public much, and few people knew his special ability. But Shu Baishui, those guys probably figured it out a long time ago. This is a knife with special abilities. It is not among the famous knives on the sea. It is a brand new, totally different, and quick knife that can release freezing power. Unfortunately, when they see the ability to freeze, it can only be their death date.
Therefore, Hayden temporarily seals the 2 Zhanpai knives.
It would be no fun if it were seen by someone you knew. Hayden did not stop in the rear carriage. He opened the connecting doors of the carriage, one after another, without stopping, and walked toward the front of the carriage as much as possible. He wanted to find a carriage with people. To be precise, he wanted to find a dining carriage.
After all, at this time, the weather is fine and the sea is quiet.
The blue sky seems to have no limit. The calm sea is like a whole mirror, reflecting the reflection of Hayden's feet, the current sea train. It presents a beauty that has surpassed the meaning of the word magic. Hayden found the dining car. The staff in the carriage looked at Hayden's dressing up on the beach. Although they felt strange in their hearts, they did not doubt it. A glass of Coke with ice cubes, a continuous breeze. In addition, the slight fresh smell of the sea in the air serves as an embellishment. What? Hayden sitting by the window felt extremely comfortable.